Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen demands free braces for her kids. Am I the jerk for refusing free dental work to my financially struggling family members? I'm an orthodontist, 35, married to a wonderful woman who's 33. Her family has always been great, but recently I had to set a boundary that caused some tension. My sister-in-law asked me to do free orthodontic work for her kids. I told her I couldn't, as I don't offer free treatments even for family. She got upset, calling me selfish and greedy because I'm successful. She made some snide comments about how doctors make a lot of money, and when she said, "What's a few $1,000s to you?" I told her, my bank account isn't a piggy bank for family members. I explained that it's a matter of principle, fairness, and consistency in my practice. Waiving fees for family would disrupt that and wouldn't be fair to my other patients who pay full price. To be honest, I know her family is struggling financially, and it's hard to see them dealing with that, but I still can't justify offering free treatment. My wife agrees with me, but is really torn up about the whole situation. She's sad that her sister is being so critical, and it's creating tension between us. Seeing this take such a toll on her bothers me more than my sister-in-law's entitlement. I'm frustrated that she's dragging my wife into this. To make things worse, even my in-laws have started chiming in. Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law have told me I'm being unfair, insisting that family should come first. They argue that since we're financially stable, I should help out, but I don't think that's reasonable. For the record, I'm happy to offer discounts or payment plans, but free treatment? That's where I draw the line. And just to clarify, no one gets free treatment, not even my own family. So, am I the jerk? Discounts and payment plans? You're doing what most dentists I've known do for family. They still have to pay the rest of their staff, as well as for materials. Free service means none of that is covered. Just no. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not agreeing to house my pregnant sister and her delinquent boyfriend after our parents disowned her? Plus updates. My family and I grew up very poor. From the time I was old enough to legally work, I, 19 female, had to take on multiple jobs while balancing school to help out my family and younger sister, who's 16. Growing up, I never had much, and whatever money I earned, I would spend on my sister and family. When I turned 18 and was accepted into college, my dad's business, which he had been working on for the past few years, finally took off. This meant my sister could now enjoy a normal high school experience without worrying about money. While I was in college, I didn't stay in contact with my sister as much since I was so busy with schoolwork. But from our calls and her social media, I could tell she had changed completely and was involved with some bad people. She posted videos on Snapchat of herself doing all kinds of things she shouldn't have been doing. I tried reaching out to her, but she mostly denied my concerns, telling me to mind my own business. At one point, she justified her behavior by saying, "This is what the cool kids do now. Not everyone was a nerd like you in high school." One of my high school friends who has a brother in the same grade reached out and told me that my sister was dating a sketchy guy from another school. Apparently, he's a criminal and been expelled from my sister's high school. When I asked her about it, she denied it. Last week, I got a phone call from my mom, who was crying. She told me that my sister was pregnant. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak, and then I felt nothing but anger. When I was her age, and even younger, I gave her everything, and so did our parents, so she could have all the opportunities her peers had. Since my dad's business became successful, they provided her with everything: extracurricular activities, sports, academic tutoring, and school events. I never got any of those things. It infuriated me that she took all of this for granted and completely messed up her life. The father? Her delinquent boyfriend who got expelled and is a criminal. My sister started blowing up my phone, but I didn't respond. Then she sent me a series of long texts asking if she could crash at my place. She also wanted me to make her a doctor's appointment and asked if it would be okay for her boyfriend to come over and stay sometimes. I shut her down. I told her she dug this hole for herself, and if she allowed herself to get pregnant, then she should deal with the consequences. Also, I'm sharing a small apartment with 2 roommates. She begged me some more, but I kept denying her. In the past few days, she continued texting me and calling nonstop, saying she has nowhere to go and has been living in her boyfriend's car. I haven't responded to a single message, but I can feel my resolve wavering a bit. I don't support her actions at all, but maybe I'm being too harsh. Edit. To clarify, I would never let her stay in my apartment. That would be extremely disrespectful to my roommates and would get me kicked out because of the lease agreement. I was only considering sending her some money, not housing her. Edit 2. My parents have disowned her, not kicked her out. They're refusing to acknowledge her as their daughter, but she's still welcome to live in their house. She's choosing not to since they're furious and would probably yell at her and criticize her, which honestly, she needs. I have a feeling if you gave in, You'd just be taken advantage of by your sister and her deadbeat boyfriend, not the jerk. If she's old enough to be a mommy, she needs to learn to take care of herself and grow up. You also have to consider your roommates. I'm sure they'd love to have 2 more and eventually 3 people living there. Not the jerk. She still has the option of a roof over her head and chooses to stay with her loser boyfriend in his car. But your parents shouldn't disown her. It will only push her closer to him. You should be there for her emotionally. Don't let her stay with you if it will get you in trouble with your roommates or landlord, but let her know it'll be okay. She made a mistake. Be an example and someone she can lean on. OP. Absolutely. I've sent her a ton of advice, including links, forums, and general information. She's chosen to ignore all of that and continues asking me to live at my place. Not sure what I'll do, but I don't think I'm going to just get more involved than that. Like you said, she has somewhere to go back to. She's just choosing not to because she can't take the criticism. Update 2 weeks later. To clarify, my family and I are Chinese, and it's common in our culture to disown your kids when they do something that largely disappoints or embarrasses you. However, this isn't permanent. As long as my sister sincerely apologizes and shows that she's actively trying to fix her mistake, they will accept her back as their daughter. Also, for those who assume my dad kept us poor because he was stubborn and wanted to work on his business instead of getting a real job, his business was a side passion project. My dad worked 2 jobs, clocking in about 50 hours a week. As for what ultimately happened with my sister, despite all the advice I sent her, she continued to ignore me. I regularly checked in with her over the next week, but her replies became shorter until they eventually stopped. I started growing concerned when she didn't answer her phone, but then I received a call from my parents. According to my mom, my sister had returned home crying and begging for forgiveness. She had a serious talk with my parents, apologizing for her behavior and promising to make amends. My mom was very emotional as well. They scheduled a doctor's appointment for her immediately, and she went in the next day. I had no idea what made her finally break and come home, so I texted her. First, I told her I was proud of her for taking action and being mature. Then I asked if something had happened between her and her boyfriend. At first, she was stubborn and said she was just over living in a car, but eventually she admitted the truth. Her boyfriend had asked her to start being a criminal with him if she wanted to keep living in his car and eating the food that he was stealing for her. What a complete loser. I'm so glad my sister came to her senses. She told me she broke up with him, and I sincerely hope that's the truth. This past Monday, she took the pills to get rid of the issue she had. According to my mom, she was begging to get it done ASAP, which was a huge relief for all of us since we were worried she might actually want to keep it. Things are looking much better for her now. My parents decided to pull her out of public school and enroll her in a progressive private school that some of my close friends also attend. It's a fantastic school, and I think it'll be great for her. She starts next Monday, and I'm planning to visit my family this weekend to check on how she's doing. The new school also has an excellent counseling department. I urged my parents to speak with the head psychologist, and they did. My sister will have mandatory weekly meetings with a school counselor and another therapist. I'm suspicious of my wife and my friend's behavior. I want to check her phone. Am I the jerk? My wife, who's 30, and I, 32 male, just returned from a long weekend camping trip with 2 other couples, friends we've known for years. We had a great time, but something happened the morning we left that I can't shake. We were all packing up, getting ready to head back home. I was loading our car when I looked up and saw my wife and my friend standing at the campsite several feet away. She bent over to pick something up, and in that split second, I saw him reach out and squeeze her leg. My wife quickly pushed his hand away, but she didn't look upset. In fact, she smiled back at him, almost playfully. It all happened so fast, maybe a second or 2, but it felt like I had been punched in the gut. I glanced around, but no one else seemed to have noticed. His wife was busy packing their car, and the other couple was further away, chatting about the ride back. The drive home was quiet. My wife tried making conversation, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying that scene over and over. When she asked why I was so quiet, I lied and said I was just thinking about work. The truth is, I was in shock. I didn't want to bring it up. If I mentioned it, she might tell me I was imagining things, that I was being ridiculous. The rest of the day, I felt like I was just moving on autopilot. I barely slept last night and can hardly focus on work today. My mind keeps racing, questioning details. Aside from what I saw, the rest of the trip was great and nothing seemed out of place. A part of me wonders if I read the whole situation wrong, but the look on her face, that smile, it was too friendly, too casual for something that crossed a line like that. I love my wife so much. We've been together since freshman year of college, and I've never had a reason to doubt her. She's my best friend. But now, for the first time, there's this knot in my gut that I can't untangle. I've never been the type to snoop. I've always trusted her completely. But right now I'm sitting here wondering if I should check her phone. It's password protected, so even if I wanted to, I don't know how I'd do it without her finding out. This is eating me up, and I need to do something about it. Update. I found her iPad. It didn't have a password, so I got in, and it's still connected to her phone. She has Telegram on it, and they've been chatting there. I'm still going through the messages, but it's clear. She's cheating. I'm not falling apart yet. I'm trying to keep it together to make the right next move without messing this up. What do I do? Do I confront her when she gets home? Do I go to his house and confront him? Please help. Update 2. I haven't told her anything yet. I've locked myself up in my home office under the pretense of needing to catch up on work. She's not suspicious. I kept the iPad with me. She hasn't used it in so long that she won't even notice it's missing. I took pictures of all of their messages with my phone as a backup. They've been chatting for at least 8 months as far as I can tell. Telegram seems to be their main communication channel. They've sent pics that they shouldn't have, all kinds of messages, and talked about making their relationship official after leaving me and his wife. I can't believe she would do this to me. From the messages I saw, she even sent him a photo of her on the way to the gym earlier this evening. Then she got back home, started kissing me and trying to hook up with me. I declined, saying I needed to get work done. I'm confused and unable to think clearly. So I'm going to follow the advice given here. Contact a lawyer and gather evidence. I'll start working on that. We co-own the apartment we live in and have joint bank accounts, but my parents passed 2 years ago and left me a large inheritance, which she knows about. She doesn't have access to that money, but is there anything else I need to do to protect myself in this situation? We don't have kids yet. Update 3. I work from home sometimes, and since I don't have any meetings this morning, I spent my time researching and calling lawyers. I've got 2 consultations lined up for tomorrow, though most couldn't book me until next week. I plan to inform my wife and show her proof, but I want to make sure I'm covered legally before taking any further steps. Once she's aware of what's going on, I'll give her time to get her affairs in order and possibly secure a lawyer before deciding how to proceed, whether that means confronting my wife or taking other steps. I don't understand how I'm feeling. I'm not angry for some reason. I feel numb maybe, sick and nauseous when I think about the messages I read, but mostly I just feel like I'm going through the motions, doing the things I need to do, almost like I'm living someone else's life. I'm not sure how long I can keep up this poker face without her noticing something's wrong. Don't bother confronting her or the guy. She will just gaslight you, trickle truth you, and try to keep you hanging on until she can get her ducks in a row. Don't move out of the house. Screenshot and back up all the evidence. Find a good divorce lawyer first thing in the morning and do what they say to do. The first your wife should know of your knowledge of this is when you hand her the papers. Sorry, brother. Been there and it sucks. But trust me, if you don't cut your losses and move on ASAP, it will only get worse. Am I the jerk for turning off the vacation house security cameras so my elderly father can't watch us? Our family has a remote vacation home. Visitors have always gone there to slow down and escape real life. Though he still drives, my aging father, who's 86, can't get to the house very often anymore. As a way to still connect with the house, he often enjoys watching the 2 exterior security cameras on his laptop, where he can see deer, listen to birds, and occasionally watch the local caretaker check on the place. The issue. These days, when we visit the house without him, he insists we keep the cameras on. He claims he never watches us because he doesn't have the time or interest. But when I ask, then why do you care if I turn the video off when I'm there? He fumbles, admitting that he, very occasionally, likes to check in to see how we're spending our time. It's clear he watches us closely. He once slipped and mentioned something he didn't like me doing, something he could have only seen on the camera. It also doesn't help that the cameras send him alerts when they detect movement. Any stern discussion about us feeling uncomfortable, how it violates our privacy, or how he never had to deal with his father spying on him, always ends with him saying something like, "How could you deprive me of this one simple joy, when old age and other considerations keep me away from the house I built and love so much? Can't you just turn the cameras off when I'm dead and gone?" I get it. He can see his grandkids running around. He can see us doing yard work and playing with the dog. He is the patriarch, and we don't want to disappoint him. But both my sister and I feel like we have to act differently than we normally would. Knowing that we're essentially in our own personal episode of The Truman Show diminishes the unique nature of our remote family sanctuary and prevents us from truly relaxing while on vacation. The last time I was there, despite my father's displeasure, I decided to put my foot down and cut the video feed. Am I the jerk? Edit. My father had the house built many years ago, and by any measure, it is his house, though we all grew up using and loving it. Technically, for tax purposes, the house is now equally owned by my father, my sister, and me. I have no kids and only visit the house with my wife. My sister has kids. Only in the past 2 years, when I agreed to add 2 exterior security cameras, did this become an issue. No jerks here. You're entitled to some privacy at your family vacation home. At the same time, he owns the house and has shared it with you for tax benefits when he passes, which he didn't have to do. Maybe cut the cameras on for small amounts of time if he wants to see the grandkids or the birds, but only what you're comfortable with. I'm making plans to leave my husband. I feel relieved and guilty about it. My husband, who's 33, either cannot or will not prioritize me, 29 female, at all. We've been married for almost 8 years. I'm not expecting to be treated like a queen, but I want to be treated like I'm actually his partner in life. My husband is a blue-collar worker who works for a family business in construction. Because it's a family business, there is seemingly no boundary between his work and personal life. It's like he's married to his job. Anniversary trips have been canceled the day before because he needed to work. He couldn't pick me up from surgery because last-minute work came up. Every date I've tried to plan in the last 4 years has been canceled because of sudden work demands. I gave up a year ago. It feels like every time I try to plan something for us, he cancels last minute. I constantly feel like I'm being stood up, but I'm his wife, not a prom date. It's not like he only flakes on me due to work. He makes plans with his buddies to drink beer, smoke cigars, and shoot the breeze. His friends call, inviting him on last-minute, week-long fishing trips, and he'll leave work immediately to pack and hit the road. Yet, when I wanted to go to a nice restaurant for our anniversary, just one evening, he told me the night before to cancel the reservation because he would be working late. It feels like he prioritizes his friends over me because he'll easily blow off work for them, but never for me. I also feel like he prioritizes his goals over mine. He's taken out loans for the family business using our joint money without even talking to me about it first. This has happened 3 times. Throughout our dating and engagement, he told me he wanted to have kids. After we had been married for 4 years, I told him I wanted to start trying for a baby. He then admitted he never wanted kids and had always been afraid to tell me because he didn't want to lose me. I feel like he robbed me of my choice and my best years. I do appreciate how hard my husband works, but I just wanted him to spend time with me like he does with his friends. I'd made peace with the fact that I may never be a mother, but I feel like he took away my best chance for that. In April, I told him I wanted a divorce and I explained why, but I said I was willing to try marriage counseling. He wanted to do counseling with our pastor, so we went, and my husband's biggest issue with me is that I'm disorganized. It's true, I have ADHD and I lose things. I'm working on it. He also complained about our love life, but I explained that I'm rarely in the mood because he rarely ever shows me affection unless he wants to hook up. He never wants to hold hands, hug me, or kiss me. So now, when he reaches for me, I cringe because I know it's only because he wants to hook up. Since I was the one asking for the divorce, I was seen as the problem. The pastor seemed convinced that I had some romantic comedy idea of marriage and wasn't being realistic about running a business. I was told I needed to be more understanding, patient, and lower my expectations, but all I've ever asked for was to be treated like a priority and not an afterthought. Then, last night, the straw that broke the camel's back. We've been planning a long weekend trip with my siblings and their spouses. 2 days ago, my husband told me he had to work that weekend and couldn't go. The trip is non-refundable at this point, so I said okay and figured I'd find a friend or a cousin to come with me instead. But yesterday he came home giddy and excited. A buddy had just called to invite him to a weekend bachelor party this same weekend, and suddenly he was excited to go. The thing is, this bachelor is someone my husband has told me he dislikes multiple times, so he canceled a weekend trip with me and my family because of work, but he immediately agreed to go to a bachelor party for someone he doesn't even like. It feels like he chose someone he dislikes over his own wife. Maybe I'm the one he dislikes. I don't know if I'm being unreasonable, but at this point, I don't care anymore. I'm incredibly unhappy in this marriage, and it's time to make a plan and get out. I still feel young enough to start over, and I'm thankful we don't have kids. I feel relieved that it's ending. I feel guilty for feeling this way, but it's the truth. My adult son, who's 23, is choosing his wife's family over his own, and we are hurting. How do I tell him? I'm 45. My son, who's 23, joined the Marine Corps immediately following graduation and is stationed 28 hours away. He married his high school girlfriend, who's 21, as soon as he was stationed. They've been together for 4 years. We had a good relationship. His father was not in the picture due to an addiction. It has always been me, my kids, and his siblings, with help from his paternal grandmother and my current husband. Initially, his wife and I had a great relationship. I paid for her to attend his boot camp graduation during lockdown when only 2 attendees were allowed. She often confided in me about problems at home, specifically her parents' issues. I helped her with school and we had girl dates, etc. When they decided to marry, I helped furnish their new home. That's when things started to go downhill. They married at the courthouse in his state and only her parents attended. She graduated from paramedic school and we weren't invited. When she moved to where he is stationed, her mother made her feel bad about the new furniture I had purchased for them. They picked it out. They took only his clothes and threw his bed away. My son had no idea this happened until I called him after the U-Haul left. He was appropriately upset that they only took things from her mother's storage unit. His wife told me that her mother was crying because they were only taking things that I had bought them. They took personal items from her mother, but no furniture. My son dropped it and I gave everything to my oldest son. I took them on multiple trips, but they stayed in their room most of those trips. Contact with my son slowly became non-existent and only occurred when she wasn't around. They come to town once a year. She arrives 2 weeks ahead of him and he comes the third week. We plan family activities, but they stay with her family and we see him very little. In the last 2 weeks they have been in town, he saw us for only 5 hours total. He told me she would be busy with her sister's wedding and that he would stay with us the entire week, but that hasn't happened. Everyone on my side and his father's side is very hurt. We threw a huge party for him and he left early because her father made plans with him the same day. I've reached out in the past 2 days, but he's ignoring me. For context, he has 4 siblings from me and 2 from his father. His father sadly passed away last year. He never visited his paternal grandmother or younger siblings after the funeral before he went home. We all feel unappreciated and pushed aside for his new family. He's always wanted to become a career military member, but has now said that he will not re-enlist because his wife misses her parents. They're buying a place big enough for her parents to live with them in a year. This came out of left field and everyone is shocked. His response is, "Happy wife, happy life." I know it sounds like I'm blaming her and her family, and maybe I am, but I also understand that he's an adult as well. How do I let him know that we are hurting? Listen, your problem isn't with your daughter-in-law, it's with your son. So many times we see mother-in-laws blame their relationships with their sons on their daughter-in-laws. Your daughter-in-law's relationship between her and her parents is between them, and frankly, it sounds toxic and manipulative, but that's for her to work out. You should focus on maintaining a positive relationship with your son. I think it's worth saying that you wish to see him more often. If you bring up his wife or her family in comparison, it can be framed as jealousy or keeping score. But just saying you miss him and hope to see him and making the effort to keep in touch will show him that you're there for him. He'll want to make time for you because you're a source of unconditional comfort and welcome. This is a hard season of life with a lot of adjustments. If you can wait it out while offering consistent support, I think your relationship with your son will one day be stronger than ever. He's only 23. That's a natural time to pull away from your family. He'll be back. Just keep the bigger picture in mind. Am I the jerk for refusing to tell my wife to stop putting notes in my lunch? Okay, so my wife, who's 27, has a habit of putting notes, affirmations, in my lunch when she packs it. She's been doing it for a year now. It started when I suffered from some issues surrounding employment, and I appreciate it a lot because it gives me strength and renews my energy for the rest of the day. So anyway, my coworkers know about it and sometimes would tease me about this by calling me a 4th or 5th grader and calling my wife Granny. Just teasing, nothing unusual for them. It happens at lunch where most of the guys in the department sit together. A coworker of mine, Jimmy, is the newest employee in our company. He lost his wife a few months ago, and he's sort of a placate dude in general. However, he started sitting with us during lunch break after the guys insisted. I sit and eat my food after I look at the note my wife left, then rinse and repeat. Till a few days ago, one of the coworkers pulled me aside, and we began talking, then the note thing was brought up. He told me that Jimmy has been enjoying sitting with us during lunch break, but couldn't help but feel uncomfortable with the notes I keep pulling out of my package every day. He then went on to tell me that the dude lost his wife, and seeing me getting notes from mine hit a nerve because it reminded him of his late wife. I felt puzzled. I asked, "Okay, what am I supposed to do about it?" He told me to consider telling my wife to stop putting those notes and maybe find some other way to do it instead of bringing them to work and having Jimmy look at them. I wasn't sure of what to say, but I told him it was ridiculous. He reminded me that Jimmy sent him to me with this message, thinking it would give me more space to react, and then told me I literally lose nothing by having some consideration for the poor guy, and be as less insensitive as I can. I told him off and said that it's not my fault Jimmy is struggling with grief, and it's not like I even know him that well to be accommodating him to this extent. He said that I was being cruel and selfish and got the others to witness the argument and shame me for my stance, but I refused to do it and went back to work on my project. Things have been tense at my workplace, and some of the guys I'm close with say that I should be more empathetic and try not to make Jimmy uncomfortable after they went through a lot to get him to sit with them on lunch break. Not the jerk at all. Your marriage and the way your wife expresses her love is your business. It's unfortunate about Jimmy, but that's a massive boundary he crossed. Are you all never allowed to mention your wives again? How long is this supposed to last? I feel sorry for him, but it's out of order to expect your wife to stop the notes. Hey OP, just a suggestion. I put notes in my husband's lunchbox. I do little drawings with a pun on a post-it. He reads them whenever during the day because he doesn't have a set lunch and sometimes doesn't even get a lunch. Depending on where you keep your lunch, maybe you could read it before lunch. What is this? Went through heck to get Jimmy to sit with them BS. Are you working at kindergarten? Because it sounds like your coworkers, Jimmy included, are very immature for not only teasing you about the notes and overstepping a boundary, but also sending an envoy instead of going straight to you himself. Jimmy will just have to learn to deal with the fact that other people have spouses instead of acting as if he's the victim because of it. Hard, not the jerk. Unless you're reading the note aloud, not the jerk. Odds are that Jimmy only knew what the notes were because of the jealous coworkers who tease you about it. I would talk to Jimmy directly and find out if he even made the request in the first place. If he did, I would tell him that you treasure your wife's notes, but will be more discreet about reading them if it bothers him. If he didn't, the jerk coworkers need to have a conversation with HR about trying to put you and Jimmy against each other. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his coworkers? Please let us know. Sorry, Jimmy, but the world don't revolve around you, bruh. Don't leave the clearance section until you finish tidying it. Another tale from my retail job, which I recently quit, while I procrastinate from my other work. This one is from about 15 years ago at my original store. I worked in the ladies section, doing recovery, basically tidying up and sometimes printing price tickets for the shelves if any were missing or torn. And though it was generally possible to get it finished within the time allotted for my shift, busy days or events, such as Mother's Day or pre-Christmas and Boxing Day sales, turned it into a nightmare. As if the usual holiday shopping mess wasn't bad enough, the department manager, Stacy, had in all her infinite wisdom decided to put all of the ladies' wear clearance into this section at once. They actually did it for all the clothes departments, but most of them only had a small amount, so you could easily fit it all in the normal clearance racks. However, the ladies' department had ended up with 10 times as much clearance as usual for this time of year, because whoever decides what clothes we'll sell made bad choices, and we ended up with mountains of horrid outfits marked down to $1, even though most people wouldn't wear it if you paid them $50. Usually they would keep most of the excess stock out in the back and just have a few racks of it in the section, and as the stuff in the section sold and the racks got empty, they'd be replenished from more stock from out the back. For some reason, Stacy decided she wanted all the ladies' wear clearance to be available to customers at once, even though it didn't physically fit on the racks. Not to be deterred by stupid little things like logic and reason, she moved the regular stock from the main middle aisle of the section into other aisles, causing those to be overfull, and ordered the full staff to put the clearance all along the middle aisle. When I say the clothes were literally bulging off the shelf arms, I'm not exaggerating. You could barely even walk down the aisle without the first 4 to 5 things on each arm falling off. And of course, if a customer wanted to look at anything further back on the shelf, they'd knock most of the other stuff off in the process. So there was constantly a several-inch layer of clothes lying on the floor. This made it literally impossible to actually recover the clearance section properly, but generally, recovery staff were told to prioritize doing a little pickup every hour or so and make sure there was no stock on the floor and spend the rest of the time going through and recovering the section, making sure everything was in the right place and in the correct size order. So, I had a shift on Boxing Day, and I'd heard from the pre-shift huddle that one of the big regional managers was coming in to visit and inspect the store at closing time, and that we needed to make sure the store was perfect. Not sure how that was meant to happen on Boxing Day, and with half the number of staff we needed, but whatever. When I started my shift, 90% of the clearance clothing was on the floor. For most of the aisle, you couldn't even see the floor. I knew that there was no way I'd be able to keep the floor clean in the clearance section because my shift ended at the same time the store closed. Anything I tidied up would immediately become destroyed by customers. So I decided I would focus on getting the rest of the section presentable and then quickly try to pick up the clearance section in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the shift before the store shut down. At the start of my shift, I did a half-attempted pickup in clearance, and tried to shove most of the mess to the side a bit so that it would at least not be right in the middle of the aisle, and then went to start the rest of the section only to be confronted by Stacy. Stacy: "What are you doing? Have you seen clearance? Why aren't you fixing it? It's all over the floor." Me: "Yeah, because you put too much stock in there. I picked it up, but it falls off again because the shelves are too full and customers just knock it down as soon as I fix it anyway." Stacy: "Well, are you planning to do anything about it?" Me: "Right now, I can't do anything about it. There are so many customers in the aisle, I can hardly get in there anyway. And since I can't keep clearance tidy with customers in the store, I figured I'd get the rest of ladies' wear tidied and then pick up clearance at the end." Stacy: "Not good enough. You need to make sure clearance is off the floor and sorted properly. You know Bob, regional manager, is due for a visit this evening." Me: "I understand that, but like I said, it's literally impossible to recover clearance because of how much stock is in there and how many customers there are. If I can at least do the rest of the area first, then it will only be clearance that looks a bit rough, and I can at least make sure everything is off the floor at the end of the shift." Stacy: "You don't get to decide what you prioritize. You need to make sure clearance is perfect. I know no one likes clearance, but you need to stop making excuses to get out of doing it. So don't leave the clearance section until you finish tidying it." Me: "Okay." 5 minutes before my shift ends and the store closes, the regional manager, Bob, shows up and is escorted around the store by the store manager, Mark, and Stacy. They stop in front of ladies' wear, and Stacy just breathes. "What on earth?" You see, I had finished tidying clearance, but the shelves were still overfull, none of the stock was on the floor in that aisle, and everything was in the right size, order, and hanging neatly. The clearance section was my magnum opus of recovery, if I do say so myself. However, the rest of ladies' wear department had not been touched. Since I couldn't finish tidying clearance until the store was pretty much closed, and I wasn't allowed to leave clearance until I did finish it, it meant that the rest of the department looked like a bomb had hit it, with stock all over the floor, clothes draped over the shelves instead of hung up properly, broken coat hangers everywhere, and abandoned shopping baskets and piles of stock from other departments left lying around in the aisles. Bob and Stacy looked like they were about to lose it on me, but Mark, who knew I was generally a good worker, asked why the department was in such poor condition given that I was meant to have been recovering it for 3 hours. I explained. Stacy told me I wasn't allowed to leave the clearance section until I'd finished tidying it, but there's so much overstock and so many customers pulling things apart that most of the stock won't stay on the shelves. And one of those moments of perfect cosmic timing, right as I said that, one of the shelf arms behind me gave way with a loud crash, sending an entire rack of clothes to the floor. Mark just stared at me silently for a few seconds and then said to me, "Well, you've done well under the circumstances. You can go home." I'm not sure if Stacy got into any trouble, but nothing else was said about it to me by the store manager, and I never got any warnings or disciplinary action or anything. The following shift, more rails had been brought out from the back and placed in the central aisle of the store, and some of the clearance had been moved to those rails to free up space in ladies' wear. Stacy refused to talk to me for about a fortnight though. Am I the jerk for going skydiving without my best friend on her birthday? So a couple of months back, I asked my best friend, we'll call her Lucy, what she really wanted to do for her 18th birthday if she could do anything. She said she really wanted to go skydiving with me and our other friend, Rachel. Normally, I wouldn't spend that kind of money on anyone's birthday, but Lucy has had a rough year. She recently lost her mom. So I scheduled and paid for the 3 of us to go skydiving on Lucy's birthday, which is on Saturday, way back at the beginning of March. It cost several $100s, not to mention that I had a whole day planned. We'd get coffee, go skydiving, I'd take Lucy out for dinner at her favorite restaurant, and then we'd end the night at a hotel downtown. Rachel pitched in to pay for the dinner and the hotel. I made sure that Lucy knew about these plans literally 2 months in advance so that she could get the day off work, and she assured me that she had months ago. I've been annoying her for 2 months, texting her periodically just to check that she still had that day off and remembered not to make any plans. Well, flash forward to this morning, and guess what? A guy that she has a crush on at work asked her to switch shifts with him, and she just couldn't say no. At first, I thought she was joking. She's like, "Can't you just reschedule for another day? Have you already paid?" I tell her of course I've already paid, and it's not refundable this close to the actual date, and that Rachel and I had already booked a room for the hotel as well. She's like, Well, I'm sure if you just called, you could get a refund. So I pull up the email from the skydiving company that literally says appointments are non-refundable. She's like, "So, what are we going to do?" I'm like, "Well, I know what Rachel and I will be doing. We're going skydiving, with or without you. I already paid for it." Then she had the audacity to start crying and playing the victim. "Wow, I can't believe my best friends are going skydiving and to dinner without me on my 18th birthday. All because I had to work. Some friends you guys are. If this was your birthday and we did something without you, you'd be upset." She's the one who decided to pick up a 12-hour shift on this one day we had made plans months in advance. I told her to text her crush back and say never mind, she can't take the shift. To which she replied, "I can't do that. I already told him that I would." Like, jerk, you told me the same thing 2 months ago. The way I see it, she's choosing a guy with a girlfriend in his late 20s over 2 girls that she's been friends with for 4 years. Not the jerk. She knew you had plans, but she let her emotions get in the way of making a sound judgment call, and now she's having to face the consequences. I hope you and Rachel have a blast skydiving and make sure to take lots of pictures. Oh man, Lucy's poor judgment makes me think she's going to have a horrible time in her 20s being a doormat to whatever guy she's in a relationship with. Not even in a relationship with. The dude is in a relationship with another woman, which makes it even worse. Not the jerk. You went out of your way for her. She has a crush on the wrong guy. I'm sure she's dropped birthday hints to this guy. Besides, why does he want the shift? Nope, no way. So have fun. Oh, and by the way, skydiving is awesome sauce. Extended warranty claim requires repair estimate. I used my credit card and bought an electric skateboard in the fall of 2018 for $279 on Amazon. Not the best timing, but I was replacing a do-it-yourself unit that I built myself that was falling apart. Being in the Midwest United States, I got only a few weeks use out of it before the weather was too poor to ride it. Spring came along, and for whatever reason, the battery would not charge. The skateboard only had a 3-month manufacturer warranty, and it spent most of that warranty period sitting in the closet due to miserable Midwest winter weather. Manufacturer warranty is now expired. It has been 5 months since purchase. But wait, my credit card has a feature where they will double the factory warranty on any product purchased with the card. Skateboard is only 5 months old, still within the credit card's 6 months extended warranty coverage. Sweet, let's file a claim. Claim is filed. I'm fully expecting them to just replace the skateboard. I get a response. They require a repair estimate before they will process the claim. Okay, fine, let's do this. I reached out to the manufacturer. I had already opened up the skateboard and taken multiple voltage measurements, so their tech support quickly moved beyond, "Are you sure it's plugged in correctly?" and "What lights did you see?" They tell me it could be one of 2 things. It could be the battery or the circuit board that needs to be replaced. They give me a price for each. But that is not a repair estimate, that is a parts list. I had used many appliance repair companies and plumbers, and most of the time their invoice or repair estimate is just a generic piece of paper with their name, the word repair, and a price. Super lazy, and yet that's good enough to get reimbursed for home warranty claims. I figured that I could write a repair estimate, and I am certainly qualified to repair this. I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. If I'm going to do the repair, I should be compensated for my work. So I wrote an itemized estimate for myself to do the repair. It went as follows: such and such electronic repair, my home address, my cell phone number, made up invoice number, today's date, replacement battery, $79, replacement circuit board, $69, labor, remove damage and components, install new, $50, diagnostic fee, $25, tax, $12.27, total, $235.27. Quote valid for 30 days, estimate only. Well, $235 is less than $279, so the extended warranty company approved the invoice without hesitation. I complied with the repair estimate requirement and got paid $87.27 to fix my own skateboard, and I now have a working electric skateboard that has given 0 problems since my repair. You sure you want that many pennies? Years and years ago, I worked as a bank teller. 90% of my job was just cashing checks and being a living ATM. One day, this guy comes in and says he needs lots of pennies. This was back when pennies were still in use. See, he's doing the classic pay for something with an inconvenient amount of loose change bit, and he needs a ridiculous amount of pennies. He's super excited to explain how this local business did him over. I won't bore you with the details, but it's pretty clear even in his telling that it was perfectly fair he was being charged this money. He's practically giggling as he explains how inconvenient it will be for the people he's paying. But here's the thing. Maybe this works down in the States, but in Canada, there's a very reasonable limit on how much you can pay with change. The payee is allowed to reject any loose change payment over a certain amount. Thinking I might be able to save everyone involved a bunch of hassle, myself included, I explained this to my customer. The guy isn't having it. Just keep saying pennies are money, so he's allowed to do it, and I better give him his pennies. At this point, I figure it's not really my problem what he wants to do with his money, and I get to work. He wants a few $100s in pennies. This might not sound like a lot, but it's like 300 pounds. It's so many pennies that I have to tell him we don't actually have enough on hand. We have to make a special order for him. There's a small fee, but he doesn't care. A few days later, he happily loads up boxes and boxes of pennies and leaves. A week later, he's back, only now he's dragging in a hockey bag of loose pennies. I guess he spent some time opening all the rolls just to make it harder. As expected, the business owner simply refused to accept this payment, so he'd like to deposit this bag of pennies back into his account, and he'll bring the rest in later. Had to tell him we only took rolled coins, and he'd have to do that first. I'm not sure when Coinstar came out, but my small town definitely didn't have one. I missed his return, but I heard he eventually came back after going through the trouble of re-rolling all of his money. A lot of trouble to get right back to where he started. If only he had listened. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my husband my new Wi-Fi password? My husband, male 30, and I, female 32, are going through some financial struggles right now. The reason for that is because my husband lost his job. He didn't earn much money anyway working retail, being overworked and underpaid. He said the reason he lost his job was because of his narcissist boss. Money is tight, and the load fell on me completely to provide for us and pay for everything, including Wi-Fi. He promised to look for a job though. My husband started spending most of his time on his phone. I keep asking if he's looking for a job, and he'd say yes, but it's been 3 months now. And I grew suspicious because retail jobs are easy to find. On the other hand, I found myself paying so much towards Wi-Fi service because of his endless activities on the internet. I didn't say anything till I ran into his former boss at the supermarket. We talked about my husband, and I brought up how he fired him, but he looked at me confused and told me that he didn't fire him. My husband quit on his own after giving him a long rant about how he was sick and tired of working retail and that he will never work in this field again. I was shocked and also fuming. I went home and confronted him. He admitted that it was true and asked me to understand because he was fed up with having to work as a server for rude, obnoxious people who don't respect him the way they should. I asked what he was going to do, and he said he's been thinking of going back to school to earn a respectable degree and work a decent job. I asked where he would get the money to go back to school, and he shrugged and said I could start a fund for him with my salary because, like he said, he will no longer work retail. I lost it on him and told him I won't save money for anything when I can barely manage. Oh, and by the way, I told him I was losing so much money on Wi-Fi service, and so I changed the password, prohibiting him from using the internet again until he starts helping me pay for it. He got mad and shouted about how I was robbing him of his rights to use the internet. But I stated that the internet is a privilege, not a right. But he called me selfish and unsupportive. I left for work later, and he kept calling me, telling me to give up the password, but I kept refusing. Not the jerk. But what a crappy marriage. Are you sure you want to be married to an entitled, lying man you have resorted to treating like a toddler? Not the jerk. Whatever he's been doing for the last 3 months isn't job searching, unless he's looking at jobs he's underqualified for, given he's disdainful of retail. Especially if it's using enough internet to become a financial drain. He's lied about his last job with his boss and how he parted from it, and only admitted to lying when you confronted him with the truth. This is the time to reevaluate the relationship, knowing what you do now, and whether you think it's worth taking a chance on your husband or not. OP, leave. Do you guys have kids? Is there something major you risk losing if you leave him? Because this is a big red flag. He quit his job without telling you and lied to you for 3 months, telling you his narcissist boss fired him. And during the 3 months, he never once told you about his plan to never work retail again and for you to support him. He planned to live off of you and lied to you and wouldn't even have told you he's not looking for jobs if you didn't find his boss. Are we sure he's not the narcissist? I beg you to leave. I know, Reddit always suggests divorce, blah blah blah. But like, some of y'all legit need it. Am I the jerk for leaving my half-brother's graduation dinner early? I have 2 older and 1 younger half-siblings. My older siblings are 27 female and 26 male, Jake, and my younger brother is 17, Denny. When Jake was 2, my dad and my stepmom got divorced, then my dad and my mom started dating and I was born. My dad and mom broke up, and then my dad got back together with my stepmother. My dad was never having an affair. He was divorced before he and my mom started dating, and my mom and dad were broken up before my dad got back with my stepmother. Growing up, my siblings were closer to each other than me, which upset me. I switched houses every other week, so maybe this was expected. It was especially bad when my stepmom's family would visit us. I didn't tell anyone until just before I went to college. After I told my dad how I felt, I didn't see my siblings for over a year, just my dad. Eventually, I was convinced to give the family thing another chance, mostly due to Jake coming to see me and saying things would change. Danny graduated high school last week. My stepmom and dad had a family party for him at the house. I saved to go half on a present for him with Jake. We got him a PS5 and gift cards for games. I was on edge because my stepmom's family was going to be there too. At the dinner, Denny gave a speech where he thanked everyone except me. He thanked his parents, sister and brother, and named them just so it was clear, grandparents and even aunts and uncles. He left the speech on the table after he read it, so I checked to see if he had just accidentally skipped over my name, which he didn't. He wrote and edited the speech and didn't include me. I was upset, so I left. I didn't say goodbye and no one noticed me leaving. 2 hours after I left, Jake texted me asking where I was, said he wanted to give Denny our gift. I told him I had left, but to go ahead and give it to Denny without me. Jake called me to ask why I had left, and I told him. Then I went to hang out with my roommates and left my phone in my room. When I went back to my room, I had a bunch of missed calls from Jake, my dad, and Denny, and messages from them, including an apology from Denny. Apparently, after Jake pointed out my absence, it ruined the mood at the party, and it ended shortly after because everyone was concerned about contacting me. I don't know what that means though, because I had been gone for over 2 hours. We talked the next day, it didn't go well. My dad is mad I left. I'm still upset with Denny, who couldn't give reason for his speech, and now I'm only speaking to Jake. My girlfriend, who they also called trying to get me, and my friends have said I was wrong for leaving and ruining the party, and that by doing so, I made it about me. My girlfriend said that I turned Denny's graduation party into something about my feelings, and that I should have made an excuse to leave, or just sucked it up for a couple more hours and then dealt with it later. You didn't make a big scene, you quietly left. I would have left too. You don't just forget a sibling, not the jerk. Just remember, family isn't blood, it's who you love and who loves you back. This can be blood family or close friends, but who you call family is up to you. Sounds like it's time for you to reevaluate who your family is. I'm so sorry your relatives suck. But also, if Jake had said nothing, then no one would have noticed. I like how no one is upset with Jake. Jake stirred the pot, yet OP is dealing with the fallout. Sounds like OP is just plain scapegoat, and likely has for all of his life with that side. Not the jerk. Also, it took 2 hours for them to even notice, so they can get out of here with the "you ruined the party" BS. It might be worth doing therapy with your dad though. He clearly doesn't see or understand how you feel. Nope, not the jerk. It was an intentional omission. He knew what he was doing. Everyone can be mad at you if they want, but you probably had the right idea the first time when you stopped communicating with your siblings. Note, only the one sibling promised you things would change. He was the one who contacted you when you left. Are his siblings actually on board with integrating you into the family? Because they haven't shown that in their actions. Karen tells me I need to stop mowing my lawn. To set the scene, I live in a relatively quiet neighborhood, and all of our neighbors take great pride in keeping their lawns and the appearance of their houses. So it's common to hear lawnmowers, weed whackers, saws, etc. On Saturday afternoon, I decided that I would mow our front and back lawns for my parents as they were preparing dinner, and I thought it would be a nice thing to do. I had already finished mowing our backyard, which took about 15 to 20 minutes, and had moved on to our front yard. When I walked into the front yard, I did notice my elderly neighbor, she's like 97, sitting outside with her daughter. While in the middle of mowing the front lawn, the daughter comes up to me and said something. I couldn't hear her because the mower was running, So I turned it off and asked her to repeat herself. She then says, "I don't know if you noticed, young lady, but we are trying to sit and enjoy our Saturday afternoon, and you are disrupting us with your mowing." I apologized, and I thought that was the end of the ordeal, so I started the mower back up. The daughter starts yelling at me that I have zero respect for the elderly or my neighbors. I told her I would be done in 10 minutes, but she just wanted me to stop and come back and finish in 2 hours. 2 hours. I once again told her that I would finish mowing now, as I only had half of the lawn left, and she blew up once again. I then told her, "Me mowing for another 10 minutes will not hurt, and you can go back inside or just wait for me to be done. I never complain when you mow yours at 7 in the morning. Now please, get off of our lawn." I thought I was polite, but when I told my parents about it, they yelled and are upset because now they think that the neighbors will talk poorly about me and our family. I do kind of feel bad now because I could have just waited to do it another time, and I may have taken it too far with telling her to get off our lawn. So, am I the jerk for continuing to mow against the wishes of an elderly neighbor? Edit. I just looked up my city laws, and unfortunately, it is legal for her to mow at 7 a.m. Karen and her family harassed my girlfriend and I over a parking spot. Big mistake. I live on a cul-de-sac where I rent a back house from my landlords. There's another elderly tenant who lived inside the landlord's house I was very close with that we'll call Good Sir. I have these neighbors next to me who I had gotten along with for as long as I had lived here before lockdown. The husband, we'll call him Mr. Chill because he had been really cool with me. My neighbors have 3 cars between them. 2 belong to Mr. Chill and his wife. We'll call her Mrs. Hypocrite, and the other car belongs to their daughter. When lockdown hit, Mr. Chill's family, for some reason that didn't make sense to me, suddenly stopped parking their cars in the driveway and would park them all on the curb in front of their house, as well as daughter taking the spot I usually parked in. Finally, after a few months of this going on, I see their daughter outside, and I ask her if she wouldn't mind sharing the spot that I used to park in with me, explaining my situation with being overworked and exhausted from my job. She gives me an annoyed look and just responds by saying, "I use it." I realize I'm wasting my time. I tell her never mind, and I go inside. Not even 5 minutes later, there's a knock at the door, and it's Good Sir, letting me know that the neighbors want to talk with me. Mrs. Hypocrite is standing there all upset, asking me what the problem is. I explain to Mrs. Hypocrite what I said to their daughter, and she apologizes for coming off so angry and says, "You know, street parking is what it is. It's first come, first serve, and we're not parking to try and give anyone a hard time." The conversation goes nowhere, but we do end it peacefully. About a week later, I'm parked in my spot for a change, and my girlfriend comes over to visit. It's summertime and it's hot outside. Later that evening, I get a knock on my door, and it's Good Sir. He says the neighbors want to talk, and I see Mr. Chill standing right there, and he just asks if my girlfriend could move her car because she's got a bunch of curb behind her, but not enough for another car to fit. Before I can even say anything, Mrs. Hypocrite shows up out of nowhere and goes off saying, "I'm sick of going back and forth about this. She is double parked and there's not enough room for another car to fit. I understand that she's your girlfriend and she's visiting, but I believe that residents should get priority parking first. It looks like you guys are trying to save the parking for yourselves, and I'm not dealing with this anymore. She needs to move her car." I'm in complete shock and have a lot that I wanted to say, but I don't, and I just go inside to ask my girlfriend to move. She thinks they're hypocrites and moves just because she feels like that's all they have to feel proud of in their lives. The only reason I gave in to them is just so my landlords do not get involved and risk it turning into them not wanting to renew my lease with me. Otherwise, I would have said something. Funny enough, even though they got upset at my girlfriend for double parking, their daughter is the queen of doing that on our cul-de-sac without Mrs. Hypocrite telling her anything. Last year in November, Good Sir wasn't doing too well and went into hospice care. He gave me his car as a gift and a thank you for being family to him. I now had 2 cars, 2 spots, and an idea. Enter petty malicious compliance. Mrs. Hypocrite said that street parking is first come first serve and that residents should have priority over the parking. Well then, so be it. I only need to use 1 car and the other can just stay parked. Since I am a resident, I decided to park whichever car I'm not using in the spot that I would normally park at and swap them out every 2 weeks in rotation. My girlfriend parks in the reserved spot Good Sir used to. The daughter, her boyfriend, and Mrs. Hypocrite have not touched that spot since I started doing this, since one of my 2 cars is always there. As a little bonus too, Mrs. Hypocrite put one of their cars they aren't using back in the driveway, and when there's a party going on and all the parking is taken up, the spot in front of their house is sometimes open, and since again, I am a resident and the guests have all taken the other spots, well, I guess I do need a spot to park after all, right? Sorry, Mrs. Hypocrite, and to the daughter. I guess you'll just have to park around the block and take a nice walk to get to your house. I'm only following what you believe the parking rules should be. Am I the jerk for filing a noise complaint about a single mom with a newborn? I, 26 female, live in an apartment. I'm a resident in a medical profession and I work 100-hour weeks, plus a lot of additional hours of studying and paperwork. I hardly sleep as it is. I cannot wear earplugs because I need to be able to hear my phone when on call or if I'm called about a patient under my care. This happens frequently and I never turn off my phone and only update it when I'm at work. Just for an idea about how strongly I'm attached to my phone. My downstairs neighbor had a baby last month. Since she came home from the hospital, I haven't slept through the night. I'm woken up every 1 to 2 hours by the baby and this baby screams. I know the mom is trying her best. I'm sure she doesn't want to be woken up either, but I'm losing it. I fell asleep Thursday standing up in the middle of rounds. My attending was not impressed and I was reprimanded. My boyfriend has been encouraging me to file a complaint because it's not fair that I can't sleep. I've tried to talk directly to my neighbor to ask if she could stop walking around her whole apartment. I've tried sleeping on my couch, which is better, but mom walks the baby around the apartment. Or maybe if there could be some soundproofing done. But every time I've had the chance to go to her apartment, she's got a note about the baby sleeping and please don't knock. I do not have her number or any other way to contact her. I feel weird about leaving a note and want to address it in person. So I spoke to my landlord Friday evening. I was very clear that I'm not trying to blame her. I just wanted to know if there could be some soundproofing done or something. The landlord said they would look into options. Well, Saturday I had a day off mandated because I'm now considered a risk to patients, which is causing a whole host of issues for me. I was sleeping and woke up to pounding and screaming. The mother was furious with me and kept screaming about how I'm selfish and trying to kick out a single mom, etc. Neighbors were watching and I kept trying to explain, but she and the baby just kept screaming. I lost it. I'm beyond exhausted and just screamed back. I told her that her baby is so loud she might cost me my job and that I just can't function anymore because of her and that soundproofing isn't the end of the world. If she can't soundproof, she should be considerate and buzz off from the apartment building. She started crying and left. I feel awful about it. I know I shouldn't have yelled. I know that makes me the jerk. But am I the jerk for filing a complaint? My impression was the landlord was going to fix the issue, not kick her out. I don't want that. Edit. Thank you for the replies. Just to address a couple points. 1. Yes, working these hours is insane. It's not okay. But unfortunately, the way this field works is you either get on with it or they will fire you, and there goes the last decade of my life. Matching with another residency is next to impossible. Besides, I want this career. Hopefully it'll change as the younger generation pushes for change. 2. I live on the top floor of my building. I've been here 5 years. There's been a few families with kids, including babies, that have lived here over the years. Life sounds have never been an issue. This baby is loud and it's constant. The baby will scream every 2 hours or so and can go on for over an hour most of the time. I do not think the mom can just tell the baby to be quiet. I want solutions so I can sleep and that's it. I've tried soundproofing my apartment, short of tearing up the floor and installing insulation of some kind. I've done everything that I could find online. It has not helped. I hear the baby crying, by the way, when the mother walks the baby around the apartment. I don't hear her walking. When the baby is in the bedroom, I can sleep through the crying, but when the baby walks over my head, I cannot. I cannot just move. Firstly, finding the time to move or the money is impossible. I have to live 15 minutes from the hospital, which is why I can't stay at my boyfriend's, and I'm lucky my landlord has kept my rent down. He's rented to many residents from this hospital for decades and cuts us a break, since I can't afford anything else in this area. I might be a doctor that works a lot, but I don't even make $40,000 a year before taxes, and then take about half of that to our student loans, so moving to a house isn't an option. 4. Yes, I could sleep in an on-call room and do occasionally, but as people have said, the rooms are awful and they're not really quiet with all the other residents trying to work, sleep, etc. Plus, I think it's reasonable to want to go home and sleep when I can. I have to make food, do laundry, call family in private, and decompress alone. So driving home and doing that and driving back to sleep for the foreseeable future isn't going to work. 5. I don't wake up to vibrations. I need the sound. I've tried noise-canceling earbuds. I don't like the headphones. I can't get comfortable. But spend most of the night terrified they'll fall out and I won't hear my phone, so I don't sleep. Missing a call is automatic grounds for termination, so the fear is very real for me. 6. My landlord called me earlier today and told me he heard about her coming to scream at me. He informed me he had no intention of evicting anyone. He spoke to her about when he could come and soundproof her apartment. He's been considering this for a while and has decided to bite the bullet and soundproof every apartment, starting with hers, as multiple people have mentioned this to him as well. She was never in danger of being evicted. I never wanted that either. Babies cry, but I didn't sign up for this. I've never had this issue in any apartment I've lived in. This is the first complaint I've made in over 5 years, besides my shower head breaking. I think soundproofing is valid. Maybe it'll disrupt this mother, but I've decided I don't care. Long term, this will be better for everyone. And yes, I'm the jerk for yelling at her. I snapped, and since everyone keeps saying this woman is exhausted and sleep deprived, so I should be understanding, I think the same can be said for me, since I'm awake when she's awake, so sleep deprivation on both ends probably led to very bad communication on both ends. Hopefully the soundproofing will resolve some issues. You work 100-hour weeks, plus a lot of additional hours of studying and paperwork? Not the jerk. I was thinking different and was about to question the hours. Apparently in the US, it's an 80-hour maximum, which is still well beyond any form of reason. But read enough that 100 hours a week isn't impossible, and you didn't say you were from the US anyway. The mother is not a jerk for having a crying baby, unless there's banging on the walls, or she's putting the baby near the window to scream out so you hear everything. She's not the jerk either. So while we all decide between whether the employee of the horrible company is the jerk or the young mother who had the baby, the real jerk gets off judgment-free. In fact, there are two. First jerk, obviously your employer, without question. What they're doing should be illegal, and that's not hyperbole. It should be. The other jerks are the people that build a set of flats and apartments that don't even have the barest of soundproofing to muffle the cries of a baby that isn't even 1 month old yet. Their lungs just aren't that big to make that kind of noise that should carry if the landlords and property owner actually built and maintained decent properties for actual humans to live in without losing their sanity. So yeah, forget judging between someone overworked to the point of passing out while standing up and the young mother with the 1-month-old infant. Both of you aren't the jerks for trying to function. Not the jerk. People make noise, but it is also okay to ask those people to do things to mitigate that noise. I live in New York City and have talked to neighbors about weird noises or putting a rug down, or when I took the bar exam, I let 2 of my neighbors know and asked them to just not have a party like that weekend. Apartment living doesn't mean that you just put up with everything. It means you figure out how to coexist, and that goes both ways. I just had a new neighbor move in above me, and she is loud just existing. She came to ask me for something, and I asked her about putting rugs down, and she looked at me like I was a jerk, until she heard her dad stomping in her apartment. She was in mine, and they went and got a rug. Problem solved. Yeah, maybe leaving her a note would have been ideal, but it is also an appropriate thing to talk to your landlord about. Not kicking her out, but asking about soundproofing options. She could have come to your door and acted like a rational person too, even if upset, and she started out screaming, so you matched her energy. I'm curious, what do you expect her to do? OP. I can sleep better in the living room on my couch if the baby stays in the bedroom. We're both in 1 bedrooms with identical layouts. I was hoping she could maybe just walk in the bedroom when the baby cries instead of the whole apartment. Walking around with a crying baby is often what helps them calm down. Also, she might need a bottle or whatever from the kitchen when the baby is crying. You can hardly tell her not to move around her own apartment. No jerks here. You chose to live in an apartment, which means you're going to hear noise. It sounds like the bigger issue is that your schedule does not work with your living situation. Additionally, I don't mean to be the jerk by saying this, but if you are that tired that you're being given mandated days off, is there really nothing else to try? Stay with your boyfriend. Try and get your paperwork and studying done with headphones in while the baby is crying and sleep when it calms. Why don't you soundproof your apartment? That's generally what people do when they have issues with noise, rather than asking the noise itself to stop. Well, what do you think? Was OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Sleep is a wonderful thing. I think we can all get a little antsy when we don't get enough of it. You should always pay your accountant, especially if you're hiding secrets from the IRS. My buddy is an accountant, and he has his own firm. His biggest clients are small to medium-sized businesses. Well, he had a client who owned 4 different clubs and bars in 2 different cities. Client was always shady, always slow on payment, etc. I was also a customer of one of the bars. They had poker games that I would play in on Thursdays. Well, one day I'm at my buddy's house having a few beers, and he's complaining about non-payment from a client. I ask who. He doesn't want to say, but it's really bugging him because it's a significant chunk of change. He then says the name. We'll call him Scott. I'm like, wow, Scott isn't paying you? He then says Scott is saying business is way down, and I think that's odd because I've been going to one of his places, and every Thursday it's packed. My buddy looks at me and goes, really? I go, yeah, he does this new cash discount thing. 15% off your tab if you pay cash. My buddy goes, really? I tell him about my experience at Scott's bar, and eventually the topic changes. A few weeks later, my buddy calls me up and says, you going to Scott's bar to play poker? I said, yeah. He says, can I join? Sure. He joins, we get a few drinks in us, lose our money at poker. My house is closer, and he decides to crash there. On the way over, he breaks down his theory. He thinks Scott is vastly underreporting his revenue. The reason why he suspects Scott is offering cash discount is because cash is easier to hide. He says he's going to do a deep dive on Scott's finances. My friend tells me his plan is to go to all 4 of Scott's establishments, get the prices he charges at each place, piece together how much alcohol he's buying versus how much Scott is saying his revenue equates to. He looks up how much Scott is paying in payroll, rent, bills, etc. Keep in mind, he has access to all this info. And he determines that Scott is basically using his credit card receipts plus a little bit of cash to cover his cost of his business to include rent, payroll, insurance, liquor, food, etc. However, based upon that amount of products he's selling, he's suspecting Scott is underreporting his total income by about 35 to 40%. He goes back into Scott's books even more, and he figures in the last year, Scott has been underreporting his sales by 35 to 40%, but he's also been underreporting his sales by at least 20 to 25% for years on end. Simply put, there's no way Scott is going through as much product and as much alcohol as he's purchasing and having the revenue numbers that he's claiming. He's underreporting his sales to his accountant, which means he's also underreporting his earnings to the IRS. By this point, Scott owes my friend thousands of dollars that he hasn't paid. He said his total amount owed could buy a brand new motorcycle. He never gave me an exact number. My friend decides, forget getting repayment from Scott. Let's get repayment from the IRS through the whistleblower program. He's estimating Scott's underreported his revenue by millions of dollars over the course of years. The whistleblower fees he had earned from the IRS far outweigh the amount Scott owes him. The IRS will pay between 15 to 30% of what they collect. So, with the assistance of a lawyer, my friend gathers all the evidence he has of Scott's underreporting to the IRS and files a whistleblower report with the IRS. During this time, my friend fires Scott as a client for non-payment. Now this part gets boring because there's a lot of legal wrangling and back and forth, but it went on back and forth. However, eventually the IRS comes down on Scott, and they come down hard. It's estimated that Scott underreported his income to the IRS by about $4.5 million. Now, my friend never told me how much the IRS was able to recoup, but Scott's businesses are no longer his businesses, and $4.5 million would put the whistleblower reward at $675,000 to $1.3 million. Keep in mind, it's based on what the IRS collects, not the amount that's reported. I've asked my friend how much he got in the end, and he simply says, I no longer have a mortgage, and it would have been much cheaper for Scott to just pay me. My takeaway? If I'm going to underreport my income by not reporting most of the cash payments I receive, I need to be sure to purchase a similar percentage of my supplies off the books. The IRS, like bureaucracy in general, is slow-moving for the most part. When someone owes them money, however, they strike hard, fast, and without mercy. Am I the jerk for ordering extra spicy food and embarrassing a date? I'm 20, female, half Chinese from my mom's side. I recently met a guy who's 23 on Tinder. When I told him my background, he started talking about how much he loves Chinese food and asked me out to dinner and for me to pick my favorite restaurant. There's a great, authentic Szechuan restaurant in our city, so I suggested that. I warned him that it's quite spicy, I have many American friends that say they love Chinese food, but what they really mean is they love Panda Express. Nothing wrong with that. I love American Chinese food too. I just wanted to make sure. He says it's fine. He's been to that restaurant before and it wasn't even that spicy. Then he made a joke about how he's offended. After this, I'm not so sure if it was a joke, that I don't think he can eat spicy food. He has a lot of Asian friends and he can handle spice better than some of them. We agreed on a date and went to this restaurant. I ordered my dish in Chinese. I look white from my dad's side, so if I ever order in English, I always get a pretty mild dish, but if I order in Chinese, they'll always make it spicier. My date told me to order for him too, and that he wanted it very spicy. He asked me in Chinese if he was sure, and I said yes, make it extra spicy, he can handle it. Food comes out and it's spicy. A couple of bites in and he starts struggling. I asked how the food is, and he's still putting up a strong front, but he's barely eating it anymore. The waitress came over and started speaking to me in Chinese, asking how the food is, the usual small talk, and then said in English to him, "Too spicy?" and laughed a little. I didn't think she was being rude. She's probably used to people ordering food too spicy for them all the time, and I laughed a little too. The second she walks away, he asked what I said to her in Chinese, and tells me I ordered it extra spicy to make fun of him because he ate at this place multiple times, but it was never like this, so I must have said something. I try to explain the whole ordering in English versus Chinese thing that many Asian restaurants will do, white spicy. It happens to me at Thai restaurants all the time unless I'm with a Thai friend. I tried a bite of his and it's the same, so he tried mine and he said how mine is way less spicy, but even after I trade with him, he basically only ate rice for the rest of the dinner. After I got home, he texted me, saying that it was rude that I purposely ordered and spoke Chinese to the waitress in front of him, even though he asked me to order, that I wanted to embarrass him on purpose, and that I ruined his meal just so I could laugh at him for not being able to handle it. I told some of my friends so we can laugh about this ridiculous date, but they think I should have known better that he was going to be able to handle that food because he probably always got white spicy and was just being a jerk trying to impress me or something, so I shouldn't have told the restaurant to make it extra spicy just to prove that he can't actually handle it. Not the jerk. I think he got what he asked for and shouldn't have bragged so much. Maybe next time he won't claim he can handle the spice. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her date? Please let us know. Oh man, I'm so hungry right now. Sproing goes the shocks. So once upon a year, I used to work for a large hardware chain that had aprons that beautifully matched my pumpkin figure. I worked in a busy flooring department and could share many a story, but the most delightful came from people overestimating the abilities of their vehicles. Pros would come in with appropriate vehicles and expectations, while do-it-yourselfers would occasionally come in with a disdain for aproned associates. Our location had seen enough such do-it-yourselfers come through that we had had a cover-yourself form that we had developed. Well, one fine day a man came in a rush and demanded the promptest of service, was annoyed at all project advice, and took offense when we had offered delivery service. He had chosen a nice slate tile and wanted a pallet for his house. We did up the sale and brought the pallet to the drive-up area. He pulled up in his new Ford F-150. No reinforced trailer, just the truck. That truck can carry roughly 2,000 pounds give or take. The pallet was about 3,800 pounds. I told him that we would need to break open the pallet. He could take half right away and the other half later. The man went ballistic. They could hear him back in lighting. After some back and forth, and a few other managers coming by and strongly advising him that his truck could not take the pallet, he was screaming and foaming at the mouth. I shrugged, grabbed the form, discussed the portions saying he was ignoring our advice and he absolves our company and its employees of any responsibility for the outcomes. He signs it, settles down, and our forklift starts to bring the pallet down on this poor truck. Once the shocks had bottomed out, I called for the forklift operator to stop, showed the guy. The operator confirmed only half of the load weight had been transferred, and we gave him a final chance to reconsider. No such luck. I indicated for the forklift driver to continue, and there was no immediate catastrophic failure. The customer thinks we're all morons, while nearly everyone in the store, including many chuckling pro customers, are hanging out at the doors watching. The guy gets in his truck, calling out a thanks to us and calling us morons, then drives a whole 6 feet before, blam, shocks blew, and his rear axle bent in a bit. He came out at us screaming while I held the paper and pointed up at the security camera that looked over the area. He declined my offer to call a tow truck. Idiot doesn't know how to use DoorDash. Let's be real. DoorDash is a plague unto this world. Ridiculous service fees, abysmal customer service, bad practices, few protections for the workforce, and the gig economy in general is a parasite on the industry. Now that the end of lockdown is on the horizon, its necessity has diminishing demand and should be excised for all but the few desperate establishments. Come out and eat, everyone. We're almost there. End rant, onto the story. It's Memorial Day weekend, graduations are in full swing, and there's optimism in the air. We are slam-a-bama jammin', and there's a healthy wait list. Phone is non-stop ringing, and the annoying DoorDash bell tone won't stop blingin'. We're still running with a skeleton crew, and the bottleneck of a small kitchen means we're already hitting 1 hour plus wait times on our to-go orders right from the outset. The volume won't stop, so eventually we have to put a pause on DoorDash orders once we hit the 90-plus minute mark. One of the last orders that snuck in before we shut it down was for a modest number of dishes that the customer had opted to pick up instead of using delivery. Hey, saves us like 20% off exorbitant fees. We've got our hustle in full swing, and this guy shows up to the window soon thereafter and says he's here to pick up an order for, let's say Karen. We're a little confused since none of the ready bags have that name, and no upcoming orders are listed under Karen. One of the hosts pulls up the DoorDash tablet and points at the 20th order down on the list. Was it this order? As she gives off the items. Yes, he says excitedly. I guess you showed up quite a bit early. It's still got more than an hour till it's ready. What? The app said it would be ready in 30 minutes. Not sure how that happened. We set the timer on that one for an hour and a half. Oh no, my wife is going to be very upset. All right, well, it's still going to be about an hour. Sorry about that. He leaves in a huff. Back in the flow until someone shows up at our window again. She's got her arms crossed and hungry for a confrontation. Hello, I'm Karen. My husband just told me that our order is going to take over an hour. I remain stoic. Yup, it's behind about 20 other tickets. The app said it would be ready in 30 minutes. I'm not sure how that happened. When we confirmed the order, we set the wait time to an hour and a half. I pull up the tablet to show her that there's still 62 minutes left. Well, that's BS. I'm already here. So isn't there anything you can do to speed up the process? Unfortunately, no. There's already several tickets ahead of you, and we've got a full house of dine-in service. It's going to be about an hour. She continues stewing. Okay, I want to cancel my order. That's fine, I understand. I can pull your ticket off the line, but you're going to have to get in your DoorDash app to cancel it so that you don't get charged. She stares down at her phone and angrily paces back to her car. My coworkers and I are looking at each other like, what the heck? Not even a few minutes later, she's back at the window looking more livid. She holds her phone out and starts jabbing her finger against the DoorDash app. I can't log in. She starts handing it over to me like she wants me to do it. I step back. I can't do that for you. All I can do on my end is pull the ticket off the line. She tries one more desperate plea. I spent $70 here. Are you saying my money's no good? You can't make it faster? $70 is a weird flex when there's a few orders ahead of hers in the $200 to $300 range. I couldn't help but chuckle, which honestly is not the best customer service response. She points at me sternly and says, "You're a jerk," and wallows off. Guilty as charged, but also her problem, not mine. The entire staff and I are laughing about this because it's just so absurd. I give the owner a heads up and he laments. It feels like DoorDash brings us nothing but headaches. Don't you know it, brother? 5 minutes later, we get a phone call. It's Karen, and she's a lot more conciliatory. Hi, I'm calling about earlier. If we still want our food, how long is it going to take? I'm easygoing. I don't take crap, but I'm also in the business of trying to make people happy, so I don't take anything personal. The app now says 56 minutes. Let's see. We're still looking at roughly about an hour. What? I also hear her husband fully guffawing on speakerphone in their car. We were just there 15 minutes ago and you told us an hour. Is this some game where you just keep telling us an hour until you eventually close and never make our order? We want our cash back. I was fully on board with trying to help them out, but now I give no hoots. They asked to speak with a manager. I skip the line and ask the owner if he wants to share a piece of his mind. He gladly accepts. He's a super chill, easygoing guy, and after being on the phone for 15 minutes with them, I see new veins in his forehead. How'd it go? I ask. I was explaining things to them, and she told me to shut up and listen. No one talks to me like that. He gathers himself. Okay, forget DoorDash. We're deactivating the account. And like that, our prayers were answered. DoorDash may account for 20% of our business, but 90% of our headaches. Good riddance. Neighbor thinks I'm the cleaner. So this happened Saturday morning. I live in a nice, brand new apartment. It's great, and the few neighbors I've met have been pretty chill, with a few exceptions. Earlier in the week, some new neighbors moved into one of the apartments. Their movers left the front door open, and while they were moving furniture in, a whole bunch of dead leaves from outside blew into the hallway. It was a huge mess. My apartment is literally the first door once you enter the building, and every time I've come home since then, I've been walking on dead leaves. We do have the cleaners who come in about once or twice a week to clean the common areas, but Saturday morning, as I was cleaning my apartment, I decided to pop outside and sweep up some of the leaves. I decided to leave most of them for the cleaners and only focus on the ones that were between the entrance and my door, and a few leaves around there. Figured it's not my job to clean the whole place, and I'd just take care of the leaves that were bothering me. Well, one of my neighbors saw me sweeping up in my PJs with bedhead and decided I was one of the cleaners. She saw that I was tying up my garbage bag and folding up my broom and dustpan. They sort of fold together for compact storage. Crazy lady. Hey, you're not done. Why are you getting ready to leave? Me. Oh, hi. I am done. I was only sweeping the space between the hallway and my apartment. Well, that's just lazy. Do your job and sweep the rest of the hallway. It's been filthy for days. Me. Yeah, I know it's been filthy. That's why I decided to clean the spot between the front door and my door. You live here? So why do you only clean once or twice a week? If you live here, you should be cleaning every day. Stop being so lazy. Me. Ma'am, I'm not a cleaner. I'm a resident. The mess in the hallway bothered me, so I cleaned the part that was annoying me. If the rest of it bothers you, then clean it yourself. Karen. How dare you? I'm going to call body corporate and have you fired and thrown out of this building. Me. Ma'am, I own this apartment and I own my own business. I do not work for our apartment's body core organization, and I am not a cleaner. I live here. The mess bothered me, so I cleaned it. If the rest of the mess bothers you, then you clean it. I'm not your servant and not going to do it for you. Well then, why are you cleaning the hallway? You think I'm stupid? No one would clean the hallway unless they were getting paid. Or unless they don't want to trek dead leaves into their home every time they get back. Well, if you really are doing this on your own, you won't mind sweeping up the rest of the halls, so do it. Me. Yeah, no. Had you asked me politely, I might have considered it. But after this exchange, you can either do it yourself or wait for the cleaners to come do it. I'm gonna go back inside and continue cleaning my place. Nice meeting you though. I walked in and she started banging on my door for a while, but I just threw some Disturbed on my stereo and let David Draymond drown out her knocks. Didn't end well though. I went out later to throw away my trash in the dumpster downstairs. This crazy jerk, I suspect, didn't actually see her, but who else would do it? Had swept all of the leaves in front of my door. So I grabbed my trusty broom and swept them all further down the hall to her door. Have a feeling we're gonna be playing this game until the cleaners show up. Maybe I'll borrow my buddy's leaf blower and just rev it up outside her door. It is pretty loud. Karen demands to drive my car. Big mistake. So a few years ago, I bought the old car from my dad. He bought a new one and mine was on its last wheel. Since I'm comfortable with that car and knew my dad was the only owner, I bought it. Note, I'm very stupid and thought he changed the title into my name, but that never even happened. It's not a pickup nor a van. It's a minivan with a big trunk. You can fit loads of stuff in there and even sleep in it if you're a smaller sized person like myself. Anyway, since I still live at home, they use my car like it still belongs to them. I've told them many times that I don't like how they use it, but they'll get mad and say I don't do anything and can at least lend them my car. Sometimes they ask, sometimes they just take the car, and I can't even go to my friend's house like we planned. When I say no, they'll get passive-aggressive and start guilt-tripping me. After everything we've done for you? If my sibling or a friend needs larger stuff moved like a shelf or something, they use my car. Bought new tires, a fridge, a washing machine, they use my car. My sibling and their drunk friends need to get picked up from a party, they use my car because it can fit 6 people. Doesn't matter that they called it ugly before and would never even drive it. If there's garden waste to dispose, which car do they use? Exactly, mine. They try not to make it dirty, but it still gets dirty. But what bothers me the most is that afterwards it stinks like manure and it has insects in it. I pay for gas, insurance, and all the other stuff. My dad does repairs, but so does he on every other car of my mom or siblings. And I, of course, pay for the parts and give him money. But it's still not my car. I'm very attached to my belongings and I treat them well. It doesn't matter what it is. Since I was a kid, my parents always forced sharing on me. Wouldn't mind letting my sibling or cousin play with my toys if it was my decision, but getting the toy ripped straight out of my hands and I wasn't allowed to complain because they would say how selfish I am, and then getting a destroyed toy back is frustrating. This car is my biggest and most expensive belonging. It's an older model without much technology in it, and I like it that way. I don't want a different car, so I try to treat it well so I can have it longer. Yeah, I'm sentimental about it. Today I had enough. The following story broke me and I started crying. My aunt called and demanded that my mom drive her with my car to help her with a carpet. My mom asks me, I say no. My aunt gets all upset and angry. Why? First of all, Aunt has a car, but it's currently under repair. She knew about the carpet since 2 weeks ago, but suddenly it's important to her when the car is at repair. Second, the carpet isn't that big. It comes in pieces that fit in a regular car. Third, they have more cars than the one that gets repaired. Also, they have a trailer. They kept pressuring me, and I couldn't anymore. I started crying. Why is it always my car? Why can't I have that one thing? My sibling gets to have 2 cars in their name, and no one uses their cars. I said if I ever buy another car, I'm gonna get the tiniest car on the market so that they can't exploit me and use it, despite the fact that I feel unsafe in such small cars. My mom just stood there watching me cry. I love my car, but I hate the shared crap so much. If my dad sold the car to a stranger, they wouldn't access it anymore. But this is different because family. I'm so done. Cut your losses. Buy a different car by yourself. Cancel insurance on the car that is still in your dad's name. Tell them what you did. Do not renew the license on it since it's in his name. Sooner or later, they will get caught driving without insurance or proper licensing. Gas? They have to buy it. Maintenance? It's in your dad's name, so it's not yours to deal with. Don't let anyone borrow your next car, and keep the keys with you at all times. If they do somehow take your car, call it in as stolen. They're simply taking advantage of you. Time to cut those strings. You are the adult here. Demand the money back. Tell them since the car isn't in your name, then you didn't actually buy the car, so they essentially stole money from you. Also, newer, smaller cars might not make you feel safer, but in an accident, you are safer than in older cars. They are designed to crumple and spread the force of the impact away from the people inside the car, where older vehicles don't do that at all, or are not as good at doing that. And this is why I disliked my ex's family so much. None of the kids owned their cars outright. The parents held the titles and used it against their kids all the time. When I bought my car, the title was sent to my ex's home address, and father-in-law kept the pink slip stating his coworker, who we bought the car from, wanted more money. I was upset. The guy was already paid, and I didn't know my ex would have it sent there when we lived at another residence. I went right then at 1 a.m. to the bank and pulled out the last of my funds and told him to get my slip ASAP. I will never have anyone hold my transportation hostage. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you keep letting them use your car or not? Please let us know. I'd set up a booby trap in it. Have you ever seen the Goonies? Am I the jerk for leaving the restaurant because of what my husband did? I would like to start and say that my, female 29, husband, male 35, comes from a well-off family, and most of his friends are well-off too. Unlike me and my family, we come from humble, working class, and we don't own a lot of assets like my in-laws do. My husband cares about appearances. At first, he didn't care how I dressed, but he did buy me things that he said I would love, but nothing was my style really. After marriage, he sat down with me and told me that I 100% get to choose how I look except when I'm with him or his family, and introduced me to brands to choose my new clothes from, and I started wearing them whenever I'm with his family and friends, although it limited my choice on what to wear because I'm more into simple things. For his friend's birthday that was celebrated at an upscale restaurant, my husband bought me a $300 dress to wear for the occasion, but I didn't like many things about it. I told him I'd just wear my $60 floral maxi dress. He didn't think this was a good idea and said that I didn't have a choice in the matter. I said, I either wear the dress or I don't go. He said fine then, whatever, but still wasn't happy. We got to the restaurant and no one said anything about my dress, except his other friend who said I looked great. After dinner, my husband moved quickly and spilled wine all over me. He freaked out and said that he thankfully had a replacement, then pulled out the $300 dress he previously wanted me to wear from a bag. This whole time I couldn't help but think he deliberately spilled the wine on my floral dress to force me into wearing the other one. He handed me the dress and told me to go change. I got up, but instead of going to the restroom, I made my way to the door. He asked me to wait, but I kept walking while opening my phone to get an Uber to get me home. I stood outside and started arguing with him. He said he didn't get why I was behaving like this and embarrassing both him and myself like that. I said that he looked down on my dress and tried to trick me into wearing what he wanted me to by spilling wine on me. He told me to go back inside, but I said I won't move until my Uber arrives. He threw a fit, calling me an embarrassment, and stood there until I left. At home, he went off on me, saying I could have worn the dress and not made a scene, and then doubled down and walked out. Again, I said he disrespected my choices and implied I was an embarrassment. He said he was just calling a spade, and I should quit acting so insensitive and getting offended over nothing. He said I made a joke out of him in front of his friends, and one of them, the one who complimented my dress, and the one who constantly tries to video chat with me whenever he sees me online, tried to call me, but I didn't respond because he made me uncomfortable. Am I the jerk? Did I handle this right? Edit. His friend, the one who constantly tries to open video chat with me whenever he sees me online, makes me uncomfortable by constantly flirting with me. He's 2 years older than my husband and has been overstepping and flirting with me every chance he gets. I told my husband, but he brushed me off and accused me of trying to isolate him from his friends by making stuff up. I'm 100% not, and I have picked up on his friend's bad vibes since the day I met him. He comes over more frequently, and I can't just tell him to leave. Red flags. Not the jerk, but what on earth? To just be sitting on a spare dress through a whole dinner? That's unhinged. OP. This was what bothered me so much that I wanted to go home. It felt like he was forcing his choice on me while ignoring mine. It felt like that because that's exactly what it was. He's punishing you for not doing what he wanted you to. I have never in my life brought a date a spare dress. The thought would never even occur to me. Not the jerk. You had every right to leave, but from what you're telling us, I doubt your husband will ever change. OP. He said that these things are relatively small, and there's no way they'd affect our marriage, but he has proven this to be untrue. Not the jerk. He sounds like a controlling jerk. It will only get worse as time goes on. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Red flags all day, bruh. My husband expects me to pay for his kids' tuition. I'm 32, female, and I'm married to a 36-year-old man, Dylan. We've been together 7 years, and we're married for the last 3. We both have previous kids from prior relationships. My kids are 12 and 9. His are 16, 14, 9-year-old twins, along with an 18 and a 19-year-old that are not his biological kids, but he continues to help raise. Up until lockdown, Dylan was making twice my salary. His job made cuts, and unfortunately, his was one of them. He still makes pretty decent, but now I'm making 3 times more than him thanks to a promotion a couple years ago. His ex-wife, I wouldn't say she's bitter or a gold digger, but that she thinks that we're in competition. For example, we moved to a bigger house, so she moved to a bigger house within the same year. We got another vehicle, and she got another vehicle. I thought maybe I was tripping. That's not what she was doing, but that's exactly what she's doing. Anyhow, my kid's father just remarried and has a new baby on the way, and they just moved into a new home. His wife was put on bed rest, so there's only one income coming into their household. Our agreement was that when we relocated closer, that we would pay for their tuition for private school. Life happened, so I ended up paying for their tuition. Somehow or another, it got back to my husband's ex-wife, and now she's demanding that my husband does the same for their kids. The way our finances are set up is we have a joint account for our expenses together, and then we each have our own personal accounts. He can't afford the tuition, but he asked would I pay for their tuition and he would pay me back. He doesn't care if they go to public or private school. He's trying to please the ex-wife. I told him no after he refused to sign a repayment plan, and he called me selfish. I told him if he wants to do what his ex-wife tells him to, then that's where he needs to be. He's already in debt from loans he's taken out for college for her two older kids who are not biologically his. Given what I already contribute to our household and our kids as a whole, no, this is something he and his ex-wife need to figure out or leave it alone. Hubby has mismanaged money one too many times trying to please his ex-wife. Not the jerk. He and his ex-wife want to send their kids to fancy schools, they need to pay for it. Or you pay for it and he pays you back. Honestly though, based on your post, not sure how likely that would be. And congrats on the fancy promotion. OP. Thanks. I highly doubt if I'm going to change my mind. Not the jerk. His kids aren't your financial responsibility for college. If he was making so much money before, he should have planned ahead and started a 529 plan way back when they were born and contributed yearly. There's no reason why he can't get Parent Plus loans. My guess, if he doesn't want to do that, is he intends to weasel out of paying you back. Why should you lose out on interest you could have been earning in a mutual fund? Not the jerk. Why are you with this guy? He's in debt and expects you to cover his kids' education? It's disturbing that he went into debt to pay for college for kids that aren't even his. He's not financially sound. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. If you have a decent understanding of finances, don't marry someone who doesn't. You'll fight about it no matter what. Am I the jerk for tricking my in-laws into trying my food? This isn't necessarily my proudest moment, but I'm tired of being the outcast. I'm 32, female, and my husband, Pete, who's 34, comes from a family where the women are all bakers. I'm a baker myself, and I used to sell out of my house under my state's cottage laws, but stopped because I like it just being a hobby. His sister-in-law, Kay, who's 39, is the one who is known for her cupcakes and cake pops. When I first met everyone years ago, it was the first thing I learned. Everyone talked about everything she made. Even when Pete mentioned how good my stuff was, everyone would say that Kay sells hers and they're popular, so they must be better. Whenever I bring treats, they are often left untouched because they are not Kay's. Yes, I've been told that. They ask me to bring something every get-together and never touch it. To be clear, Kay is mainly a baker, whereas I bake and specialize in professionally decorated cakes. Kay says that overly decorated cakes are compensating for their bad taste, and Pete's family agrees. We had a barbecue Monday for Memorial Day, and everyone made their treats. Kay decided to bring cake pops. She posted them on her Instagram the night before. So, and I know this is immature, I made the exact same ones she did. Same flavor and design. We got there, and everyone asked where my treats were. I said they're in the car, and I'll go get them in a minute. So I waited for everyone to be outside, then I brought mine and put them next to Kay's. After we eat, I noticed the family eating my cake pops and not Kay's. She didn't notice at first, and then asked if they weren't feeling cake pops. They said they just ate them, and they were the best she's ever made, and asked what she did differently. Mother-in-law even said they looked so much better in person than in the picture. Kay was confused and said hers were still on the table. That's when I said, "Oh, I brought those. Glad you enjoyed them." Her husband said he hadn't had one yet. Lies, he ate too. And everyone else just said, "Yeah, they were okay." Kay didn't say anything the rest of the night. Pete thought it was funny. He didn't know what I did until the reveal. But his brother, Kay's husband, said yesterday that what I did was mean, and I'm just mad that Kay was a better baker. But Pete said it's ridiculous the family, including Kay, puts down my baking when they won't even try it at all because I'm not Kay. Am I the jerk? Edit. We aren't the only two who bring desserts, just the ones who tend to bake cake more than others. Everyone else's desserts get eaten to some degree except mine. Edit 2. If it's not clear, everyone includes Kay. She has often tried to teach me techniques that I either already know or were completely wrong, so she wasn't innocent in this. Not the jerk, but Pete's family is full of jerks. What you did was petty. I don't blame you for being angry with them, but it was still very petty. For that reason, I give you a soft "you're the jerk" and a high five for making them look dumb. I think you're not the jerk. I also think this is hysterical. I'm also incredibly petty, so keep that in mind when reviewing my judgment. I mean, people are going to say you're the jerk for all that pettiness, but you know what? I'm here for it. Not the jerk. Kay needed to be taken down a notch, and the family needed to hear how crappy they've been treating you. You're not obligated to follow along while everyone puffs up her ego. Well, what do you think? Was OP a jerk for what she did or not? Please let us know. If I were OP, I wouldn't go to any of those family events anymore. You don't need to be around toxic people who mistreat you and disrespect you just because they're your in-laws. Am I the jerk for telling my mom and her husband that I can't wait to turn 18 to leave their house? When I, 16 male, was 5 years old, my mom had an affair and left me and my dad for a wealthier man. For 2 years, I only saw my mom like 4 or 5 times. I can't even remember, but not more than that. Then she disappeared and didn't contact us again. I think my dad thought it was too much responsibility for him, or he was angry at my mom and somehow wanted to take everything that reminded him of her away. So he sent me to live with my maternal aunt, and I only saw him like 2 or 3 times a month for half an hour. Unfortunately, my aunt passed last year. I thought my dad would take me in, but he's busy with his new family, wife and kids. My grandma, Dad's mother, wanted to take me in, but then my egg donor came out of the blue to take me in. When she came to take me, it was the first time I saw her in 9 years, and it felt weird, and it sucked that she hugged me and kissed me as if nothing had happened in those 9 years. She married the man she left us for, and they now have 3 kids, who are 10, 8, and 7. I've been living with them for 6 months now, and I spend most of my time in my room, since we're in another city 6 hours away and I have no friends here. We rarely speak. She tries to talk to me, but I ignore her and her husband. They try to include me in activities, but it sucks seeing them playing the perfect family when I missed everything as a kid, so I don't really like them. Her husband tries to make me call him Dad. He tries to spend time with me and talk to me. He knows I love tennis, so he learned about it and has signed me up for tennis lessons and wants to talk about it all the time he sees me. He even wants to take me to some matches. He introduces me as his son, and I hate it since all I see is the guy that stole my mom from me when I needed her the most. It happened yesterday. He asked me to go with him to the grocery store, and then he met a friend of his, and as his friend hasn't seen me in any family photos, he asked about me, and then my mom's husband said, "He's my firstborn. You didn't know about him because he was living with a sister of my wife's." I didn't make a scene there, but when we got out, I told him to never say that he's my father. He's just a homewrecker who stole my mom. We got home and he told my mom, then my mom, almost crying, said, "You hate us that much, don't you?" So I said, "Of course. You left me and now you want me to act like nothing happened by playing the happy family. To be honest, I can't wait to turn 18 and leave, and I'm not sure if I'll ever want to see you again." She started crying and her husband comforted her, so I just went to my room. They tried to talk to me, but I've just ignored them. I told a friend of mine about this, and he says I'm the jerk. OP, I hope you find peace when you move out. It's going to take hard work on your part, and I recommend finding a good therapist. Your formative years were terrible because of your parents, and I'm saying this from a place of similar experiences. It's going to influence how you grow into adulthood and make new friends and relationships. Having someone who is truly in your corner and can help you navigate your feelings and relationships is an absolute gift, and there's no shame in therapy. Also, if you can start saving money now and thinking about college and employment, don't tell your parents. Have a secret account. Start planning your move now. I wish you all the best. Not the jerk. A good therapist will be an investment in your future. Your parents should have put you first, but instead both abandon you for their own selfish reasons. Not the jerk. Not the jerk, because honestly, what teenager hasn't said this at least once? Your mom should know better than to inflate the drama here. She's feeding on it, which is a pretty big bad parenting flag. Am I the jerk for uninviting my boyfriend from a trip after hearing him insult a personal tradition of mine? I, 21 female, have a tradition that I hold dearly. Growing up, I had a deaf friend who I'll call S, 20 male. We've been friends for almost 18 years before he passed after a drunk hit and run a year ago. When we were young, I was struggling to learn American Sign Language, and S would teach me. When attempting to sign to him my birthday, I signed the wrong month. My birthday month is in June, and I accidentally signed January. Ever since, our tradition was us celebrating my birthday twice, once in January, then on my birthday. It was extremely silly, but it was a tradition we had and continued doing up until the time he passed. This year will be my first time celebrating the tradition without him, but several of my family members and my boyfriend, 22 male, offered to celebrate with me this year. My boyfriend knows how much this tradition means to me and has met S multiple times before he passed, so it's not like he doesn't know nor understand the tradition at all. This year, we're planning to go down to Disney to celebrate, and I bought my boyfriend a ticket. I wanted to personally hand it to him and head over to his place. Once there, his roommate let me in, and I overheard him talking to his friends about the tradition and how he found it so stupid, and that he didn't understand why I wanted to do the tradition since S is now gone, and I'm just wasting money. Immediately, I let my presence be known, and I confronted my boyfriend. He attempted to cover himself, but I let him know that he's not attending the trip with me. My boyfriend is upset at me and saying how I was a jerk for peeping in on his private conversations, and that I should have heard him out, then removed him off the trip, and that I'm overstepping his boundaries and overreacting. Honestly, I'm mentally stunned that I'm stuck in this limbo, and I don't know what to do nor how to respond. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If he didn't want to be overheard, then he shouldn't have been saying it out loud. This. And OP, I've been married for 12 plus years, and my husband has never insulted something that was important to me. I think your boyfriend's comment says something about him as a person, and I would be ending things. He saw your love for this person. He knew how important this tradition was to you both, and he still felt that way. Those are his true feelings. He's just not a good person. Your husband has never insulted something that was important to you? Just because you've never heard him say it doesn't mean it's never happened. Just because you felt the need to comment that doesn't mean you should. Well, your husband might not have said it to your face anyway. Why would you say that? They're clearly in a relationship based off of trust, and you just come in with such a sad comment like that. Not every relationship is with two jerks. Well, what do you think? Should OP let her boyfriend go on the trip or not? Please let us know. No, and I don't know why he'd want to go if he thinks it's so stupid. Am I the jerk for backing out of paying my sister's tuition after learning new information? My sister received an email in mid-May that said she would be withdrawn from college if she didn't pay off her remaining college balance by next week. At the time, we all thought withdrawn meant expelled, and my parents and I strategized to each give a certain amount of money to help my sister. Now, I'm also a recent college grad, and I'm saving to move out and take care of my own expenses. Paying this for my sister is a huge sacrifice, and I know that, but I thought it was worth it at the time. I called my sister's school on her behalf to see if we could get flexibility on the payment date, and what they told me was that withdrawn is not the same as being expelled. It's mostly an administrative process, and once her balance is paid, she'd have no trouble getting back in. So when my sister starts working this summer, she'd be able to pay her tuition off herself. However, my mom and sister are rushing to pay this right now because my mom thinks being withdrawn is a big deal, and my sister's having issues with her summer trouble because she needs to prove she's an enrolled student via her transcript. However, A, it's not a big deal, and B, her transcript won't be updated in time anyways, so paying off her balance and crossing her fingers won't help. In addition, my sister let me see her account, and 1, the balance is larger than we thought, and 2, it's mostly for her appointment expenses. Thing is, we've all, including me, been sending her hundreds of dollars a month to help with her apartment expenses on top of the financial aid she receives, even though the apartment was a decision all of us warned her against. At this point, I think my sister should be the main one responsible for paying off her balance when her job and tax return comes in. I love my sister, but I'm tired of subsidizing her bad choices. I was going to do it when the situation was dire, but now that I know withdrawn does not mean expelled, I won't. Am I the jerk? Also, info. I've given my sister over $2,000 this year already. Not the jerk. You're basically a safety net, as you said, for your sister's bad choices. Not the jerk. There isn't such urgency to pay off the account, and like you said, your sister has been making questionable financial choices. OP. She spent $500 on her hair alone this semester, and just bought a new nail kit. At this point, I'm just venting, but I'm tired of having to cover her constantly. So stop enabling her. If your parents want to continue bailing her out, let them, but tell her no more from you, not the jerk. Entitled Aunt nearly ruins free vacation. This story happened before lockdown. I love Ireland. My grandmother told me stories and inspired a pride and love for my heritage and taught me how to properly represent myself. I am not Irish, but my ancestors were. Years ago, I started studying Gaelic, the Irish language. I'm still very novice at speaking and understanding it, but I enjoy trying to learn and like hearing it spoken. I was starting to think about another trip when one of my cousins contacts me. We never had much contact because we grew up so far apart, but I liked him well enough. He had started learning Gaelic and was interested in having someone to practice with, so we did. We helped each other and learned together. It's difficult language, and like I said, still very novice. Well, I was planning a trip to Ireland. I had been a few times, but this time I wanted to stay in the Gaeltacht, the regions of Ireland where Gaelic is primarily spoken instead of English. The people there speak English, but as a second language. I thought my cousin would enjoy a trip as well. I spoke with my uncle and we made a deal. Since cousin was in his first year of college, I told him if he finished his freshman year with at least a 3.5 GPA, I would pay for him to go with me. He worked really hard and was taking mostly honors classes and came out with a 3.4. I, of course, let him feel a little grief from trying so hard only to come up short, then told him that he was still going with me. You could say I shouldn't have, but he genuinely worked very hard and I believe he earned it. Plus, he's a good kid and I want to encourage him to keep working hard in his education. Now for a little quick background. My cousin's parents, Aunt C and Uncle T, are people of limited means. Not speaking poorly of them, Uncle T works hard to give them a comfortable life. Aunt C is my dad's sister, and the grandmother I mentioned earlier is her mom. Uncle T is the son of Italian immigrants. While trying to put Cousin B through school, they couldn't afford to send him on vacation, but I assured them the whole trip was on me. I actually was splurging a bit because I wanted it to be an awesome experience for Cousin B. I got business class seats for the flight and booked 2 rooms on a really nice bed and breakfast. I was excited. My cousin was so pumped he was shaking. Then Uncle T calls me. He asked if there was any chance I could include him and Aunt C on the trip. He understood it was a huge thing to ask and stressed that it was no pressure. I thought about it a bit and decided I would bring them along. My grandmother would have praised the generosity. I told him that since it was so close to the trip, I could only get them economy seats, and he said that that was fine. I also managed to book another room at the B&B. I also expressed that the purpose of this trip was for Cousin B and I to interact with native Gaelic speakers, but there would be some time for sightseeing. We could also visit the town our ancestors came from in County Mayo. This is where I learned what a Karen my Aunt C is. It started at the airport. I had managed to upgrade their tickets to Economy Plus, which on an international flight is not too bad. But my aunt was saying that Cousin and I should sit there while the grown-ups get the nice seats. I was 30 at that time. My cousin was 19. My uncle looked embarrassed. She told Cousin B to give her his ticket, and he almost did. I had to nip this in the bud. I paid for all of these seats, so I will determine who sits where. Those are still nice seats. Enjoy your flight. Aunt C. Oh, so since you paid for everything, you think you're in charge? Me. Yes, and if you don't like it, you can go home. She huffed but stayed silent. Uncle T gave me a wink, and Cousin B apologized for his mom's behavior. At one point, he quietly said to himself, "She always does this." Great. We arrive in Ireland and took a cab to our bed and breakfast. The first 2 days were great. Cousin B and I went out and tried to awkwardly converse with the locals who were as gracious as you could wish for and helped us a lot. We mostly did stuff separately from Uncle and Aunt, which was fine, but I noticed Aunt was getting a little edgy. And on our 4th morning at breakfast, she snapped. One of the girls working at the B&B brought them their breakfast and apparently greeted them in Gaelic, like she did every morning. This was the point where everyone there began to hear, "Does anyone in this place speak English? Oh God, it's like being in a foreign country. My grandmother lived her whole life here. She could speak English. Why can't you?" Before I could appreciate that my aunt had actually said, "It's like being in a foreign country," I was out the door and running across the yard. I apologized to the poor girl and gave her a €50 note, then went to talk to my aunt. "Do you not understand what I told you about this part of Ireland? I thought I explained that Irish Gaelic is the primary language spoken here. Most people will start interactions in Irish, and it is a big part of the B&B's business too." She just sat in her room looking huffy, and Uncle T told me he'd handle it. He had fallen in love with Ireland and had been thoroughly enjoying the trip, so I let him deal with it. Then went to talk to the landlady to ensure we wouldn't be thrown out. She didn't tolerate mistreatment of her staff, but said if it happened again, they would have to leave. That day, I had rented a car and would be driving out to where my ancestors originally lived near Castlebar. I invited Aunt and Uncle, but Aunt just stayed in the room. So the 3 of us went without her. It was an emotional thing visiting the little village, and I can't describe it, but Cousin and I both felt like we could feel the spirits of our ancestors there. I know it's corny, but it was powerful. We found the graves of some of them as well. Uncle was mostly silent and respectfully let us experience it. Later, he told us about his parents leaving Italy. Rest of the trip was pretty quiet, but Aunt C never left the room or spoke to anyone there. Although she did charge a pretty expensive lunch to the room, my card, through a local high-class restaurant, Uncle T offered to pay me back for it, but I refused. We flew back, and the whole flight, Cousin was going on and on about how amazing it was. It was clear that he had found a new love for international travel. So I told him if he keeps his grades up, maybe we could go next summer. It became a regular trip for us, but never again brought the parents, except for his final year. I was not going to have the time off to go, but thought I would mix it up. For a graduation gift, I sent him and Uncle T to Italy to see where that part of his family was from. I intentionally left out Aunt C, and she was upset about it, but never got back to me, though I heard she was deeply insulted. If anyone is wondering if I had other cousins, aunts, or uncles who were jealous, the answer is yes. My dad has 6 siblings, and all of them have kids in a wide spectrum of ages. When asked why I never brought any of them, I said it was because Cousin B was the only one to show any serious interest in our heritage and the language. While granted, most of our trips involved failing to converse with people, then saying, "oh well," and heading to the pub, it was still a fun challenge for us. However, if any other cousins wanted to show a serious interest in the language, they would be welcome. None did. My sister's kids destroyed my apartment. I finally gave her a piece of my mind. I, 23 female, live on my own. I'm single and never plan on getting married or having any kids. My sister, Rose, who's 29, is married and has 2 kids, twins, Ava and Zoe, who are 8. I'll be the first to say that her kids are brats. They're nothing but spoiled and expect everyone to drop everything to help them. Rose and her husband, James, have no self-control, and when their kids throw a tantrum, they'll immediately be given whatever it is they want. To see 2 8-year-olds boss around their parents is nothing but sad and pathetic. Since they're the only kids in the family, everyone practically worships them and never sees how bad they really are. It was my birthday recently, and I invited everyone over to my apartment to celebrate. When planning it, I mentioned that I was inviting a few of my friends too, and since there would be alcohol, I would feel more comfortable with it being a child-free event. Everyone agreed. Well, on the evening, she had to turn up late and with the kids. I told her to leave and come back when she found someone to look after them, but James and my parents both told me I was being too serious and that it was a party for all of us to enjoy. They didn't even care that it was my birthday or my apartment or my rules. In the 30 minutes Ava and Zoe were there, they smashed a plate, put their handprints all over my glass windows, got hurt after they opened the oven after I explicitly told them not to, and they threw a tantrum because I didn't have pretzels and refused to leave my own party to walk to the shops and buy some. The final straw was when they picked up a glass of wine somebody had left on the counter and they took it into my room, where they promptly spilt red wine all over my white sheets. I pulled James and Rose into my room and told them they need to leave right now before I made them pay for all of the damages. Rose told me that they were just kids and didn't mean to. I told her it was her fault for the way her kids turned out and that she raised them to be spoiled brats. She called me a selfish jerk before grabbing her kids and they all walked out. I haven't spoken to her or James since then, and while my parents think she shouldn't have said that, they told me it's still my fault for not planning a party that accommodated for her kids. I don't think I should have to change my own lifestyle to support her own choices, and I think I'm the one who's owed money for the damages and an apology. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. They're just kids. Yeah, kids you haven't taught to behave and respect other people's property, and I want them around about as much as a dog who's not housebroken. Not the jerk, but make them pay for the damage anyway. It sounds like they're not just the kids, but the parents that need consequences, or they'll never learn. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that she should have gone to college if she wanted a life like mine? Hello everyone, please excuse my grammar. English is my 4th language and 100% self-taught. My sister and I are twins. We're both 33. We come from a culture where arranged marriages are an option. We're not in India though. Mostly they are blind dates set by a matchmaker, and if you are compatible, you get married. When we both graduated high school, my sister, who was valedictorian by the way, chose not to attend college. She asked for an arranged marriage since all she really wanted was to be a wife and a mother. Nothing wrong with that. My parents, who are a love match, tried to convince her to at least get her bachelor's, but she refused. I, on the other hand, started attending an engineering college, computer engineering. A year later, she married a man that she met through the matchmaker. He is a very nice man, a teacher, and he treats my sister like a queen. The thing is, he was just a freshly hired teacher. My sister went from living in a double-income house with parents being both high earners, a doctor and a lawyer, to a single-income house on a teacher's salary. I graduated at 23, started working as a cybersecurity personnel for a big bank. After 2 years of dating around, I too asked for an arranged marriage. My husband is a business owner, real estate developer, and he makes a lot more than I do. He also comes from money. My sister didn't like him from the get-go. She even threw a tantrum, thankfully in private, at my wedding. Apparently, the bride gifts he bought were tacky, more like very expensive, more than what her husband could get her. The problem is that my first kid is now at the age where she will be starting preschool. We signed her up for a private school. The monthly tuition is more than what her husband makes. When she heard this, she just exploded. She was ranting about how it's not fair that our kids will not have equal opportunities, how the only reason I could live like I do was that my parents chose a better husband for me. I became angry for how she treats me, how unfair she was to her husband and to my parents, so I laid the truth out on her. I told her I got matched with a better husband because I'm college educated with a respectable job, and that wealthy men using matchmakers don't want a 19-year-old high school graduate. Their standards are higher. I told her that her husband is a wonderful man who loves her, but if all she wanted was a wealthy man, she should have gone to college. Now she has no contact with me. She says that I'm the jerk. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She's jealous and envious of your life because you decided to go through college and become successful. Also, how horrible she is to be talking about someone she presumably loves. Sounds like she was only marrying for the money, not for love. You told her point blank what it is. If she wanted a wealthy husband, she should have gone to college. Her decisions and choices are the reason why her life is the way it is. Also, it's her fault that her kids won't have the same opportunities as yours. OP. Also to add, they own their home. Her kids go to private school too. He got her her own car and they travel too. It's not the same as what my husband and I can afford, but it sure is great and the dream life for a lot of people. If her kids go to private school too, then what is she complaining about? There must be something else going on. Maybe it's the twins thing. Maybe it's because everything was the same and equal for you two while you were growing up, and she's having a hard time accepting the fact that that's not going to continue into adulthood once you start living your own separate lives. I don't know, I'm just speculating here. OP. The difference is that her kids go to a normal private school. Think a school in a better district for people from the US, while mine will be going to the uniform-wearing school where kids from very rich or well-connected families go. Not the jerk. She's so jelly, you could call her Smuckers. Everyone sucks here. She is clearly envious, but you clearly like to throw in extra details to make sure people know how great you are. Some examples. English is your fourth language and 100% self-taught. Apparently the bride gifts he brought were tacky, more like very expensive, more than what her husband could have gotten her. The monthly tuition is more than what her husband makes. I can already tell when you talk about your life with her, you are giving her the business and making sure she knows how much better things are turning out for you in a very condescending way. Oh, sister, if you had just been like me and done this and that. She probably should go no contact with you for her own mental health. Yeah, you get the vibe OP reminds her sister how much better she is doing than her. English is your fourth language and 100% self-taught? Yeah, that was enough for me to stop reading. OP sounds like the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. Sometimes I get the feeling that some of the commenters on those stories are kind of bitter and I don't know, maybe I don't know. Am I the jerk for letting my son have a lock on his door so his cousins can't barge in whenever they want to? I, 30, female, and my husband, 32, male, have a 10-year-old son who is an only child. My older sister, her husband, and 3 kids, who are 12, 7, and 5, all live down the street, so they're around a lot. This bothers my son, as he's a quiet kid who likes his own space, and they always swarm to his room to play when they come around. And it's upsetting, especially as there have been a few toy breakages in the past. After talking it over with my husband, we installed a lock on his door and told him that he can use it to keep out anyone that he doesn't want in his room as he's old enough for privacy, though we explained we had a copy of the key too for emergencies. My sister and her kids came around the other day for lunch. This was the first time since the lock had been installed. Of course, the kids swarmed towards his room only to find that the door was locked. At first, they thought it was stuck and came to tell me, and I told them that no, it was locked. and it was up to my son if he wanted to let them in or not. This upset my 12-year-old nephew, who wanted to play with my son's PS5, so he began to try to get me to make my son share. I told him no, I wasn't going to force the issue, but if he wanted to play video games after lunch, then he could use my Switch that was hooked up to the TV in the living room. My sister was annoyed at me over this and told me that a 10-year-old didn't need that kind of privacy, and I was just training him to be rude and inconsiderate. Bringing up how her 12-year-old didn't have a lock on his door, so why would a 10-year-old need one? I wasn't going to point out in front of her kids that they were the reason he needed the lock in the first place, so just said that it was something my husband and I felt was appropriate and that our son was ready for it. She then began to apply pressure to my son, trying to convince him that he wanted his cousins to come play in his room as they were so bored and, "Wouldn't it be fun?" My son isn't good at confrontation. As I said, he's a quiet kid, and he was clearly feeling uncomfortable, so I told my sister to lay off, and if her kids needed to play so much, there was no reason to hang around after lunch, as it wasn't fair to make them sit in there bored. My sister did eventually leave in a huff, but has been telling our parents how rude I've been, and how I'm teaching my son to be inconsiderate too, and how I'm not teaching him to share. When we go to their place, he always asks before touching anything that belongs to his cousins, and I've expressed in the past how they should return that consideration, but it's always ignored. Our parents are taking my sister's side, stating that families share things, and besides, having his cousins around to play will help my son become less shy, and how he doesn't need privacy at that age. My husband is on my side and has suggested my sister and her kids not come around for a while, which honestly I'm leaning towards. Is it really that weird to give a 10-year-old privacy and the ability to decide who comes into his room? Not the jerk. As someone who grew up with very little privacy, thank you. You're doing right for your kid. OP. I grew up sharing a room with my sister, so I knew at his age I'd have loved something like this. Maybe this is some carryover from that. All up in your business, tattling to mom and dad when she doesn't get what she wants. You're doing all right. Next time OP's sister comes over, tell her you want to use her phone, and if she asks why or doesn't want to give it to you, ask her why she's never learned to share. Forcing kids to share is BS. Not the jerk. I don't think her brat wants to play with his cousin. He just wants to play on his PS5. Also, everyone needs privacy. Sadly, I used to be like this kid. Not a day goes by that I don't regret how I treated some of my friends. Hopefully that kid will mature. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to my daughter's graduation ceremony? I, 40 female, have a daughter, 18 female, who I'll call B. When she was younger, her father, we broke up before she was born, was very involved in her life and was admittedly a dad's girl. But this all changed when she turned 8 and he got married. He barely called and just abandoned her for his new family. This was obviously hard on her and she rebelled a lot, but she went to therapy and seemed good. B has not seen him since she was 12 and he speaks to her maybe 3 times a year maximum. When he calls, she believes he is now back in her life for good, then he ghosts her for the remainder of the year. This being said, B and I have a great relationship. We do everything together. She even refers to me as her best friend, so I'd say we have a good relationship. Recently was her graduation and I was excited. But then she came to me a week before and told me she's going to invite her dad and his son. And because her dad doesn't want to see me, I can't be there. B told me that this was the only way he was going to go. I angrily told her that I felt betrayed and won't forgive her for this. She just told me I have been there for many of her milestones and she wants her father to experience some too. Things got heated and we argued. The night before her graduation, I pleaded with her, but she ignored me when I spoke and only said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not changing my mind." I left and cried until my sister offered to take me out during the graduation to take my mind off of it, and I agreed. I woke up the next morning to my daughter bawling her eyes out. I looked at the time and realized that the ceremony starts in 5 minutes. I asked B why she hasn't left yet. B then tells me her father ditched her and isn't answering anymore. I hug her and tell her to make the most of her graduation. She looked shocked and asks if I'm not going to the ceremony now that her father isn't anymore, and how it'll be embarrassing to be the only one there without parents. I told her I'm sorry, that I already had plans. She then screamed and called me a bad mom. I apologized once again and got ready to go meet my sister. I chose not to go because I felt betrayed and wanted to teach her that actions have consequences, even if it broke me that I didn't go. Since B returned, she hasn't spoken a word to me, and she looks depressed and like she's been crying for ages. I'm starting to regret not going. My sister says I did the right thing, but one of the moms at my daughter's school said she was depressed at graduation, and now I feel bad that I ruined what was supposed to be a day to remember because I wanted to teach my daughter a lesson. So, am I the jerk? Update. I don't think I'm a bad mom for this one thing, and I accept the judgments and read everything. To answer your questions, does B go to therapy? Yes. This isn't the first time B has ditched me for her dad. She's been doing it for 10 years. This is the first time I've said no to her after her father abandoned her. I have asked her therapist if B is being manipulated, and she said no based on B and her father's messages, and my daughter is just grasping onto a reality that isn't there. Update. I went to my daughter and apologized for not going to her graduation. I also explained that it's not a nice feeling to be left out, and I feel underappreciated. Also, that it's fine to want her father there for her, but I should too. B told me that she's sorry things ended this way, and that she loves me, gave me a hug, and wanted things to be back to normal, and that she acted like a jerk. I told her, nevertheless, I should have been there, and if I could do this all over again, I would have gone. Honestly, I said this as I thought she now knew her dad can't be trusted, and I felt for her. Then I asked her if she regrets uninviting me in the first place, and surprisingly, she said no. This hurt me, but I figured it was because I didn't go, so it was understandable. But no, she continued saying that it was probably best I didn't go because she would have been more miserable as she would have preferred her dad to be there anyway. Then I got upset. I didn't show it. I told her my feelings were hurt, especially since I've been there for her, and she said that she's always going to want her dad there for her big moments. I asked, even at the expense of me, and knowing he most likely won't show, and she replied, I mean, if I have to make sacrifices, I'm going to have my dad there. I repeated the question as she seemed to be swerving it, but she just shrugged and went on her phone. I told her not to expect everyone to apologize and turn a blind eye when she doesn't value them in the real world. And I also said, knowing how she feels, don't expect another apology from me, and this is the last time I'm doing this. She looked teary-eyed, but I left. I don't know how other parents do this. I know her father is going to keep abandoning her, and honestly, I'm at my limit. And if I didn't know whether I was wrong or not before, I definitely know I was right in not going. I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash saying that I'm bitter and angry. I understand wanting her dad there, but I should be on the same level of importance as him. I'm still going to be there for her when he inevitably ditches her again, but if this behavior carries on to her next graduation or wedding day, I can't say I'll be that apologetic to her. I should have just listened to Not the Jerk. Not the Jerk. You gave her an important lesson about maintaining relationships with the people who are there for you and not blowing them off for the next new thing that comes along. I fully agree. Daughter treated her horrendously. Daughter might now go no contact, but she would be the jerk to do so given how she's treated her mother. And OP, stop apologizing. You didn't do anything wrong. The more you apologize, the more your daughter believes that she was right in her actions. At best, you can say, look, I understand you're hurt and I'm sorry you're upset, but this is a consequence of your actions. A lot of people here are forgetting that OP tried to ask for her daughter to compromise. OP and the dad could have both gone to the graduation, but of course, dad is trying to form a wedge between them, which seems he has probably been doing for years. OP's daughter is very naive and still has yet to understand that her father is the problem, and unfortunately is taking it out on her mother. Crappy situation all around, but sometimes our biggest lessons are learned the hard way. No, I think the father had no interest in going. So father said, I will only go if OP won't be there, assuming there is no chance that OP would honor daughter's wishes and not attend. Then, surprise, OP did as her daughter asked and stepped aside, and father was left having to attend a graduation. Graduations are incredibly boring. Even if you adore the person who's graduating, it's a pretty miserable experience. No way the father wanted to attend. Father was just looking to say, B, I would love to be there, if only your mother wouldn't be there. Too bad. You, as a parent, could have handled this better. You could have just went to support her, despite how she hurt you by pulling that crap with her dad. And this is by no means agreeing with what she did. I firmly believe she was the jerk for that, nor diminishing your hurt feelings. That being said, graduating from high school is a pretty big deal. If I was in the same situation and this happened to my kid, I would have been there for her, because if you love your kid, you stand up for them, despite their misguided and ill-advised intentions to capture the love of an absent parent. Had you done that, it would have the desired effect of her seeing that her dad really ain't crap, to where he can't even pull it together to be there for his kid. Despite him not wanting to see you, He should have been able to suck it up for at least a couple of hours as opposed to attempting to ban you from the ceremony. But he didn't. What he did was way worse. He dashed her hopes and let her down again. That act alone was sufficient enough to rip the blinders right off her. And you went right ahead and compounded the issue. Instead of being the best friend and parent that she says you are, you essentially abandoned her too. That was like a punch to the gut, and she got a hard dose of reality. Like I said before, I am in no way condoning what she did, but what you did could just as easily backfire on you. Not only did her dad ditch her for one of the most important events in her life, but so did her mother, all in an effort to punish her for hurting your feelings. Being a parent means that this happens from time to time. Nobody's perfect, and we all mess up from time to time. If you don't want your feelings hurt, don't have kids, don't get married, etc. If you don't get ahead of this, you will be on the fast track to no contact with your kid. Do you really want that? As soon as she's able, she'll try to get away and stay away from you as fast as she can. You need to apologize and make it right. But seeing as she still lives with you, you also need to make this a teachable moment. Acknowledge that you acted out of hurt and anger. Let her know while you could have handled it better, your feelings were no less valid. Remind her of the fact that you were there for her this whole time when her father would make only cameo appearances, and for her to deny you the chance to share in this achievement with her was really painful and unfair to you. Help her to understand that her father has shown a consistent pattern of behavior where she is concerned and is very unlikely to change it. He has shown her over and over again who he is. It's time for her to believe him. Do this without bad-mouthing him. I cannot stress enough how important this is. She needs to draw her own conclusions from this. And last but not least, both of you need to go back to therapy. There's a big umbrella to overcome, but with time and patience and a helpful outside perspective, you two can see yourself through to the other side of this. Hoping the best for both of you. Everyone sucks here. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know.
Definitely the daughter. I wouldn't have gone to her graduation either.
Oh, you mean right now? Okay. Let me, 25 male, introduce you to the key players in this story. First, we have my dog. She is a service animal and as a result is very well trained. Up next, my annoying and petty neighbors. I live in a small duplex with an even smaller front yard that isn't fenced in. The only thing separating the duplex and the neighbor's house is a very narrow driveway. It's important to note that when I refer to the neighbors, I'm not referring to the residents of the connecting unit of the duplex, but the owner of the house a driveway over. My neighbors have a history of annoying behavior. For starters, they are extremely socially awkward. They watch over us like hawks, have never been able to hold a conversation with us despite us being friendly and trying, and are some of the most passive-aggressive people on earth. Maybe it's because we're college age and they have something against the youth, but for whatever the reason, they have it out for us. The neighbors have called our landlord to tell them that we are partying at all hours of the night. The family, with infants, in the connecting unit, the unit that shares a wall with us, have never once complained. When the landlord asked them about these complaints, they always denied it. For reference, aside from me, none of the other residents of the house even drink. I drink on occasion, once every few months, but never at the house, out of respect for the sober people. The neighbors called the city over the course of several months and got one side of the street turned into a no parking zone because we have 4 cars in total, one for each person that lives in our unit, and have to park on the street. This obstructed their view. As a result, they started parking in front of their house on the legal side of the street. One day while we were gone, they moved their truck from the driveway, that has ample parking, to the street to block us from parking there. Their truck didn't move for about 6 months. Anytime my dog goes number 2 in the yard and it sits for more than a few hours, they call the landlord to report it. Because of my disability, I can't always get to it immediately. My landlord understands this and understands how the neighbors are, so she had stopped saying anything aside from laughing with me about how ridiculous and annoying these people are. This is just a short list of my grievances with our neighbors. I could go on, but by now you get the point. Well, yesterday morning, I let my dog out as per usual. I was in my boxers as I had just rolled out of bed. I'm standing in the doorway where my neighbor's house is blocked from my unit. As my dog is sniffing around in our yard, I look down at my phone. A few seconds later, I hear our neighbor, the wife, shout,
No, don't do that here. Get out of our yard. Stop that.
In a very panicked voice. Turns out, they were all sitting outside. By the time the neighbor had shouted, it was too late to call my dog back over. She was in the process of gifting them a big present. I shout, Hey, I'm sorry about that. I'll come get it. Give me a minute. And I call my dog back inside. Dead silence. About 15 seconds go by. I was on my way to the room to throw some pants on and a shirt when I hear a muffled shout from the husband. "Come pick this up right now." I chuckled to myself and shouted, "Okay," with a huge grin on my face. I knew what I had to do. I dropped the pants that I had grabbed. I turned right around, picked up a doggy bag by the door, and made my way out of the door and into the view of the husband, who's standing cross-armed near the pile of doggy doo with a rude expression and posture, the wife and the daughter. Watching the look of anger turn into shock was satisfying. He was truly speechless, and so was the rest of the family. I'm just happy to have a story that I can finally share on here. I also think the family is Mormon, so that was probably the craziest thing that they've ever seen. Am I the jerk for giving my daughter's pets gifts and offending my son in the process? I mostly use Reddit for the bird watching and animal videos, so apologies if this old lady doesn't quite fit in. Unfortunately, when I was younger, birth control was frowned on in many circles, and I ended up having 2 kids due to the pressure of society and family. I'm so glad the younger generation has more of a choice. John and Amber were very good kids, and I did everything I could for them. Kissed boo-boos, told fairy tales, held them through scary tantrums, helped with homework, made sure they were fed, educated, and protected. But once they moved out, I was just so relieved that it was over. I could finally find out who I was without society frowning at me, expecting me to be someone. Amber and I spent a lot of time together still, and John comes around with his family at least monthly. Their father thankfully passed peacefully, so it's just me and them. On to the issue. John has 3 kids, my grandbabies. I was never all that interested in being a grandma. I'd hoped to be done with the burden of kids, but I do my best. Amber does not have kids, but she does have a dog and a cat that she loves. I jokingly call them the grandpuppies, and though I know it's silly, I get them little gifts on the holidays too. John recently came to me upset because I bought a new cat tree for Amber, who is fostering kittens. He said that I've never done anything like that for his kids, and that they could use a new jungle gym in the backyard or new toys too. He became very cross with me and told me I was a terrible grandma and a horrible mom, and how it was typical of me to treat cats and dogs better than his kids. He stormed out with his youngest and said he won't come back until I acknowledge how hurtful my behavior is. I talked to his wife, and she relayed that John is upset that I don't do all the grandma things you expect: art projects, day trips, sneaking them candy, etc. He thinks I'm cold and unfeeling and have always been. To me, getting a cat tree is more for me to show Amber that I respect who she is and will never push her to be a mother if she doesn't want to be. But to John, I guess it's a sign that I value kitties and puppies more than babies. Am I the jerk? The question of if I ever buy presents for the grandkids has come up a few times, and I want to confirm that yes, I do buy them gifts at appropriate times. They are not left out, but no, I have never gone out to spend $1,000 at some random jungle gym. I'm editing this post again because I'm seeing a lot of strange comments that have created a much different story of what has happened. I do not dote on the animals. They get little gifts on the holidays like the grandkids do. I don't have any pets of my own, and I've never had them. I've always supported John's lifestyle. I went and stayed with them at their request when the first child was born. I paid for their preschool, and they've been sent to my home many times so John and his wife could take a break. In my mind, supporting their actual needs was showing them the most love I could. There is a huge price difference between a cat tree and a jungle gym. He's comparing apples to oranges, not the jerk. Also, I think it's cute that you call them your grandpuppies. He's comparing apples to an entire orange tree. A jungle gym is wildly more expensive than a cat tree, and the kids probably get gifts more often and of greater value than the pets. No joke. My mother-in-law just got one for my daughter at almost $800, and that doesn't even include the $1.3 thousand landscaping to flatten the surface or $800 worth of rubber mulch to soften a fall. Apples to orange grove is more like it. Karen took my cat, but I was set on getting him back. About 2 months ago, my cat somehow managed to get out of the house. I, 25 female, don't usually let my cat outside, save for letting him play in the back garden, which he can't escape due to how it's laid out. I personally think, because it's been so warm lately, that he got out by squeezing through one of the open windows, which was open by just a tiny crack. But it baffles me how, because a cat wouldn't be able to push it open by itself. I also keep doors closed, and I'm very careful most of the time. My husband and I have no idea how it happened, as it's never been an issue before. All in all, it was a very emotional time for me and my husband. My cat means everything to me. He's become something of an emotional support animal to me, and he's over a year old. I raised him from a tiny stray kitten, waking up around the clock and hand-feeding him milk to ensure he'd survive. I thought he wouldn't make it, but he miraculously pulled through and has been my best friend since. In short, I love my cat very much. Onto the story. When my cat disappeared, I was besides myself with grief. My husband and I made posters. We contacted pet sanctuaries, pounds, vets, etc., in hopes he had shown up or someone had found him, but no luck. I was beginning to fear the worst. All kinds of scenarios played out in my head, and I was finding it hard to sleep. Eventually, a month later, we got a call. It was from a woman who worked in a nearby old folks' home. I cried with relief as she explained that they had found my baby and asked me to come collect him. When my husband and I got there, though, we were mortified to see our cat in such a poor state. He had lost weight and his coat was matted. He was afraid to go near us. We knew it was him, but he was so unrecognizable. The worker went on to explain how he had shown up and a resident, an old woman, had kept him hidden in a box under her bed, and he was only discovered when another worker began to get suspicious over the smell of cat pee. I fought back tears because not only had my boy gone through that, but also that this sad, lonely woman was desperate for some form of companionship. A part of me felt guilty until the old woman's family showed up. I tried to gently explain that I wanted to take my cat back because he belongs to me and he needs to see a vet, but the family yelled at me, calling me heartless for taking an old woman's only friend away and how they had gotten attached, so the family knew but also kept it a secret from staff. I said I was sorry, but I had bonded with my cat. He's in my name and he needs to come home. They proceed to call me a monster. Thankfully, my cat is doing much better now and has gone back to his old self. But the family has yet to stop harassing me and my husband. I'm reluctant to complain because I don't want to cause the old woman any more grief as she's clearly unwell. Am I the jerk? Info and updates. 1. From what I now know, the old woman actually did let him roam around her room and feed him, but I'm almost certain it wasn't cat food, so we did check in with the vet when we had him looked over, and thankfully it didn't seem like it was anything toxic. She had him hid under the bed when it came to routine medicine and room checks. I never did find out how she got him, but I can only assume he wandered off or was tempted by food or caught somehow. 2. The family must have been called when the incident was reported, maybe out of concern, hence why they showed up suddenly. As for how the family managed to harass me, it took me a while before I took down as many of the missing cat posters as I could, but my first priority was making sure my cat was safe. Someone could have taken pictures of the posters on their phones, plus the care home is very local, as in just around the corner from me, and I can only assume that families live close by too, as they saw me out buying food a few times, and I'm certain they figured out where I live. Neighbor won't stay out of our yard and lets his dog use it as a bathroom. We purchased our home a couple of years ago. It's 45 years old, and we have a pretty big front yard that wraps around on both sides to a backyard with woods. The neighbors on either side of us have fully fenced-in, boxed-in yards with tall wooden gates. Our yard is open, and we're currently in the process of building a fence on the sides so that our dog has a space to run free. We have a 10-month-old German Shepherd boxer mixed puppy. She's sweet, picking up training, and does well outside when we take her on walks. And when she is outside, we put her in the backyard on a long, heavy-duty lead that's anchored so she can run around until this fence is complete. The neighborhood is full of dogs. Everyone seems courteous and picks up after their own, with the exception of our direct next-door neighbor. He lets his 2 dogs free roam. Everyone thinks it's so cute. They apparently don't believe in leashes. While I'm impressed that his dogs are so well trained, what I'm completely upset about is that he lets his 2 dogs come into our yard multiple times a day while he's working outside, and they use it as their toilet. He jokes with me about it, saying, "Oh, the dogs must like you guys," etc. The problem is, and I've addressed it with him directly in person and also indirectly with snide comments already, he lets them wander all over the place, and they keep going to the bathroom in both our front, back, and side yards. He knows that they're doing it because he's up on his ladder trimming his trees and isn't oblivious to seeing what they're doing. His yard is immaculate with a sprinkler system, and it's very, very well manicured, so I know he isn't clueless about the value of a nice space and picking up dog doo. When we walk our dog, I always pick up after her. I bring bags with us, and I don't let her go in other people's yards, period. I think it's rude to assume that because someone has grass, your dog should be able to use it as a toilet. Some people won't agree, but we have taught ours to go on the road and we just pick it up afterwards. I feel like this is a common courtesy. The issue now has become that our dog will be minding her own business in the backyard, and suddenly the free-roaming dogs just show up, startling her, and she gets very territorial and wants to go after them because they came into our yard ready to fight. Not only is it her nature to protect us, but she knows her property now and that this is her space they're coming into. Yesterday, our dog was barking like crazy in the entryway. She wouldn't stop and kept peeking out of the glass in the door. So I look outside, and not only are there two dogs playing in our front yard with a ball, but the neighbor is out there in our yard, right smack dab in the middle, just running around and chasing them like he's at a dog park or something. A few moments later, I see that the guy across the street has let his dog out, and now he is also standing in our yard, just chatting it up and playing with all the dogs. This isn't a city park. Are you kidding me? Our front yard is probably 1/8 to 1/4 of an acre, and the back and sides are another 1/4 of an acre. It isn't hard to decipher that this is our front yard. It doesn't butt up to any other public space. It's an older cul-de-sac, and we just so happen to have the broadest, widest areas of space out in front of the house, while other neighbors have larger backyards instead. The street comes to an end, and our yard is there along with our driveway next to it. It's very clear that this isn't their home. So I opened the door yesterday while these jerks were hanging out in my yard, dog barking like Cujo, holding her back with her harness, and I said, "Look, you guys need to get off of our property. This isn't a park. Our dog is very territorial, and one of these days she's going to go after someone or someone's dog if you guys don't stop letting your dogs roam." They just stood there like I was the issue, just a jerk with an attitude. So my husband went outside and he chatted with them as well. Explained that she's a puppy, we are obviously building a fence. Pieces of it are up. He said he's concerned that one of their dogs will get bit if they just wander into our yard because our dog will get startled and defend her territory. So what are my options here? Aside from becoming a no trespassing sign psychopath and sticking them up everywhere, what do we do? Obviously, we care about all the dogs and don't want anyone getting hurt, which is our first concern. But these people have zero care in the world about just wandering into our yard and using it as their own space. What gives? This makes me want to go look back at our camera footage to see if they've been doing this all along and nobody has said anything to them. These same men go into our neighborhood group on Facebook and regularly post about people speeding, about picking up trash and minding noise levels, etc. We don't have an HOA, so I feel we are at the mercy of these self-righteous jerks who think they own the neighborhood. Today, the dog was barking again, and lo and behold, the man and his dog are back in our yard again. Who behaves this way? Put in sprinklers, even a cheap movable one, and turn it on every time the people show up in the yard. I'm honestly annoyed for you. I would be livid. Get them charged for trespassing. Why bother saving a relationship with people who don't even respect your literal and figurative boundaries? Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you try to get them to stop or not? Please let us know.
Oh, I'd know how to get him to stop, all right. But trust me, you really don't want to know how.
Am I the jerk for giving my dad his money back in front of his other kids and telling him he was no longer welcome at my graduation? My graduation ceremony is being held next week. My dad has given me some money in advance to pay for the party. I live mostly with my mom, but they were supposed to be hosting the event together. Dad and I have a rocky relationship. After my parents divorced when I was 4, they split custody of me, and he was able to stay a good dad. When I was 10, he met Jane. Jane had 3 kids, twins and a single kid. They got married when I was 12, but I would say even before that, I felt like he prioritized her kids over me a lot. He would cancel plans with me if they wanted to do something, and would either do the thing with them or force me to go and say it was even better than our plans, when for me it wasn't. Think going for a hike with me versus taking them to an indoor play area, or seeing a movie with me versus the kiddie park. One more example is when I was given a ticket for a concert my dad and I both love. He was supposed to buy a ticket to come with me for some father-son time, but actually spent it on his youngest stepkid who wanted their room painted. He told me at the last minute, and it hurt. There are other times stuff like this happened too. He didn't show up at the hospital when I broke my arm because one stepkid was getting their tonsils out and wanted both him and his wife there. He told my mom over the phone to tell me he was proud of me for being brave and understanding, even though I never said that. When I would bring this stuff up to tell him, he'd tell me it was natural to feel jealous of sharing his attention. That was all he would say. In 2019, he told my mom he would split the cost of a trip I wanted to go on with one of my clubs because she didn't have the money all by herself. Mom had her half saved. We told my dad he needed to pay. He said bills were tight and it was the twins' birthdays and the money needed to go on something for them. He told me we could do something as a family when the trip happened instead. I told him to forget it, that he was making it clear who was more important and I was going to stay with my mom where I actually mattered. Mom borrowed money to cover the other half of the trip. Dad told me he regretted making me feel less important and we were working on things, and then the graduation money was given about a month ago. Then a week ago, he called me and told me how one of the stepkids was being bullied, how bad of a time they're having, and with that money, they could help cheer them up for their birthday. I was upset. I hung up. Then 2 days later, I showed up at his doorstep, gave him the money back, and told him I didn't want to see him or his new family at my graduation, and that he had chosen who was more important, so he better stay out of my life. His stepkids and 2 younger biological kids were there. I didn't stick around. He called and told me we needed to talk it out like adults and that I had hurt the kids' feelings. His wife freaked out on me, so I blocked her. Am I the jerk? As a mom with kids from 2 marriages, I will say absolutely not the jerk. Your dad consistently and constantly chose everyone else above you. This is not okay. Making and breaking promises is disgusting. Saying one thing and then backing out is gross. And asking for the money back? No, just no. He is not a father, he's a spineless donor who deserves nothing from you. You needed a father, and he was absolutely not it. And I'm sorry. I want to add, OP, his behavior has nothing to do with you. You are worth everything he failed to do and more. His behavior shows the person he is, always will, and always has. Also, his reply tells a lot. They need to talk like adults because OP hurt the kid's feelings? Really? After your kid told you that he wants you out of his life and wants nothing to do with you because you prioritize your new family over the old, this is what is on your mind? This man is useless and he doesn't care. Good riddance, he's not a father. This is what I would tell him. Call him by his first name and say, there's nothing left to discuss. At every moment, you have made it abundantly clear that your stepkids will always take priority over me. Every single decision you have made since they came into your life has proven this as a fact. Because of that, I no longer want to have a relationship with you. Moving forward, I will simply tell people that my father is no longer a part of my life. I was tempted to tell people why we no longer have a relationship because I think people should see you for who you really are. But I've come to the conclusion that I need to let go of the pain and resentment entirely and move forward in my life without the burden of your pain on my conscience. So I'm letting you go. Thank you for helping to bring me into this world. That was the first and only thing you ever did for me that truly mattered. But this is the end of our journey together. I can't count on you. You're never going to make me a priority in your life, and I can't continue to be let down by you. You have a family now that I'm not part of. It's time we both accept that this is just the way things are and how they'll always be. I do apologize for confronting you in front of your kids. That was not my intention. You've been good to them, and I know if the roles were reversed, I would be upset having heard what I said. But they know that you love them, and in the end, this too shall pass. I wish we could have had what you had with them, but we don't always get what we want out of life. So be good to them, and be the kind of father they deserve, not the kind of father you were to me. After sending this message, I will be blocking you on everything and asking Mom to cease all contact with you. You will not be getting any updates, nor will you be hearing from me anymore. Please do not attempt to contact me ever again. Not the jerk. Deny my employee claim? I'll withdraw everything from your company and watch you disintegrate. I have a story that started back before lockdown and just concluded a while back. Obligatory first-time poster, and English is my third language, so forgive any errors I make on my use of words. I'm a typical simple guy who likes to relax and was born with the proverbial silver spoon in my mouth. I'm the black sheep of my family and a middle child to boot. Double whammy. But I at least have some brains and some luck, which I kind of use on a day-to-day basis. Due to my parents' connections, I managed to get into lucrative schools in my country, did my military service, and was promoted upward to captain, and later on was shipped off to college out of the country. I've never been too close with many people apart from my circle of friends, and I prefer it that way. After my college, I was employed in government. You guessed it, family connections. And after a few years, was able to use my name to get ahead and meet people who helped me set up several businesses in my area, a coastal city where this story happens. The money I used was generally allowances, small inheritance from my late grandma, some investments, a fund that was started when I was a baby, and money gifted to me by family, basically an attempt to not leave me broke enough to embarrass them, even though I am a simple low-maintenance fellow. My businesses are booming since the coastal area we live in attracts a lot of tourists, local and international, and of course some locals who wish to mingle with the tourists to get green cards, pen pals, spouses and such. Typical coastal city, I guess. The incident. As a proprietor of my business, I have most, if not all of my staff on salary since it's the best way for them to gain benefits and is easier for me as a business owner tax-wise. Tipping is more of a gift usually since we do not have a tipping culture. And I have my staff on comprehensive medical insurance, which has additional dental and optical on top of the national government healthcare medical scheme. We also have a mandatory legal requirement to provide employees with retirement benefits, minimum of 21 working days leave, I give 30, and my businesses offer paid overtime, unhindered medical leave for surgery and serious conditions which can be extended, as well as allowances to seek treatment such as chemo or dialysis. One of my female employees, an older lady who is brilliant and had moved up the ranks to manager and was adored by all, was booked for a hysterectomy since, as she told me, she was at risk of cervical cancer as her mother had passed from it a few years back, and since she already had 4 kids, it was the most logical step. She did her due diligence and found a private hospital which was in our system where she could have the procedure done. On the planned date, she applied for leave days, which we obviously approved since this fell under the scope of medical leave. She went on to have the procedure successfully and had a quick recovery time. The bill was to be catered for by the company insurance, and we had made sure to get all of the necessary pre-authorizations. A few months later, she came back to work looking distraught, and in all honesty, we thought that she had been told that she had gotten cancer since she had asked for a day off to go for review and tests. But what happened was much worse. She had been given a bill by the hospital since the insurance had refused to pay for it, citing that it was not in the scope of cover. We were livid since we had made sure everything was in order. I sent my accounts manager to go have a talk with the insurance people as we tried to calm her down. The manager came back super angry and told me that basically after showing them the evidence, the insurance people just told him to buzz off. I decided to personally go visit that office and get a clear understanding of what was happening. They kept me waiting for an hour, and even after that had the audacity to inform me the director from the head office who was in the area had declined to meet with me because he was quote-unquote busy. I was upset to high heavens, so I decided to go to their head office in the capital city, a 2-hour flight. The head office was no help and informed me that they had revised their policy and that it was not covered. I asked when the policy was revised. They informed me a month prior. I informed them the surgery was done 5 months prior and we had the documentations. They claimed that it was 12 months retrospective. I inquired why I was not informed of it since this was big news, and I have held policies with them, and they told me that they had informed their large clients and would inform the other clients when the insurances were due for renewal. I demanded to speak to their boss, company vice president, since the CEO was not around, and they boldly told me they had no time for me, and frankly that, in verbatim, "We are a large company and have no time to argue with low-end clients. If you don't like it, you can frankly leave and find a new insurance company." The revenge. If I had been initially upset, I was full-blown mad now. I was livid and filled with rage. In all my years, I may have experienced some disrespect, and I accepted it not to make problems, but this time it went too far. I decided in the heat of the moment to switch everything and be done with them. I flew back home and just plain went to the hospital and settled the bill in full and took the receipt to my employee, who initially insisted that she would do anything to pay me back, but I refused since it was in no way her fault, and I'll be darned if she pays for something that was way out of her control. I had a few days to cool down and talked with my directors. The words still etched in my mind. I asked how long it would take us to switch to another insurance. They went ahead and checked out a few large rivals of the insurance we had and discovered that if we switched, it would take 6 months for the new insurance to provide full coverage. The firm we picked, who I'll call New Insurance, offered us a way better deal to the one we had, and not only comprehensive coverage, dental and optical, they also included mental health coverage, physiotherapy and occupational therapy coverage, rehabilitative services, mobile device acquisition, prosthesis or wheelchairs for some of the disabled employees, smart cards for direct payments and outpatient visits, kind of like a debit card, and a dedicated team of relationship managers. It would cost me a little more, but I didn't really care. The people who dealt with us from our previous insurance, who I'll call old insurance, seemed unfazed that I was pulling my company from them since they thought it was just a small business. They looked puzzled when I came in with several people and a few boxes of documents. What they failed to realize was that apart from that one business, which is a restaurant, I have 3 popular bars, a cab company, a hotel resort, cleaning service chain, a building and residential guard service, and several rental buildings in the town and around the country. Their shock was compounded when they were informed by the lawyer just who I am, and the shock, awe, confusion, and panic when they heard my family name was an extremely satisfying sight. Cue the pleading and attempted negotiations and apologies. It was so big that the news reached their head office, who sent not only their director, the one who was apparently too big to see me, but also their chief legal officer, chief financial officer, and president of the company. I somehow also earned a personalized call from their CEO who was abroad. No amount of sweet-talking was changing my mind, and by the end of 6 weeks, we had completely removed ourselves from the old insurance. It was now a waiting game to the beginning of the new insurance coverage, and we really hoped that no one would become unwell by that time, but we were ready just in case. In that waiting time, and after the new insurance commenced, I talked to my friends and my family on one of my holiday visits. My older brother's kids adore me, and the family kind of realized that they were jerks to me and are trying to re-enter my life, and I thought that was that. Aftermath. My friends and family took my words and also pulled their businesses from the insurance to other insurances. The company took such a huge hit, and when lockdown came around and was a big deal, they were barely floating. They went into receivership soon after and were acquired by the insurance I had moved to, who happened to be their greatest rivals. The directors and CEO were given their golden parachutes and resigned, and most of their employees were luckily retained apart from the senior executives, including the ones who told my manager to buzz off. In a cruel twist of irony, the building they were operating on in our town was sold, and if you guessed I purchased it, you would be absolutely correct. I decided to remodel the inside and turn it into a business rental space. All in all, it was a bit of a sweet payback, and wherever they are, I hope those disrespectful guys learned that everyone is human, and they are not above anyone, and remember that karma is a cold and heartless jerk. Maintenance guy at Senior Living Center gets revenge on satellite TV companies. Over 200 plus residents emerged victorious. I'm the maintenance director at an independent senior living center. It's pretty much an apartment complex in which you have to be a senior citizen to reside. We provide 3 meals a day, housekeeping, activities, a bus for transportation, and several other amenities to increase the quality of life, because more times than not, they will spend the final years of their life here. Our facility is family-owned and oriented. Family members of current employees are encouraged to apply for positions. We have one rule in our employee handbook: ensure resident safety, happiness, and prolongment of life. I take my job very seriously and I take pride in it. I try to go above and beyond to make them all happy. Each resident during the daytime either listens to the radio, plays crossword puzzles, or most of the time watch their favorite TV shows. We do not provide television service. Each resident has to provide it themselves if they choose. Over the last year, there has been a trend of televisions not working in countless units, and when this happens, they are very upset. When I get a work order for a TV, I go and check it out. Most of the time, there's nothing I can do. If the cable isn't cut, everything is plugged in, and there is no obstruction to the satellite signal, it's going to be a software issue. When this happens, I install an air antenna until their regular service is fixed. I call the company and a tech comes out, fixes it, and usually within a couple of hours it stops working again. This is a never-ending cycle of upset residents. Over the course of an entire year, I spoke with several supervisors and tried to schedule for someone to come out and go through the entire property with me to address each issue. They weren't having that. They wanted me to go to each individual unit and have that particular resident call them. This is almost impossible. A lot of them have trouble hearing and discussing complex matters over the telephone, let alone know the 4-digit code and the answer to the secret question. Our resident was out of service for over 60 days, and I demanded they refund or discount this particular resident properly. They ended up only giving her $21 off, which isn't even half of a single month's payment. When I spoke with this particular representative, I told them that wasn't enough, and I would be throwing all of their dishes in the dumpster. This is just the tip of the iceberg. These companies have caused significant property damage to the facility. They've ran the coax in the gutters and down the downspouts, ran cables draped over the sidewalk, which is a tripping hazard, installed dishes in the center of courtyards and wherever is convenient for them. All over the property, cables are strung out on top of the grass for hundreds of feet. They don't bother to bury any cables. I've discussed this numerous times with the owner of the facility over the last year. The last time I spoke with him about it, he gave me the okay to handle the situation and do whatever needed to be done to fix the issue. My options were limited, and the only feasible option I could concoct was using a landline company that didn't need a satellite dish. Well, I have officially finished running new coax to every single unit, and a landline company has come in and installed boxes and services in each resident's apartment. Residents who have previously had to pay a monthly fee for their television service now get their service free of charge. Those that never had service now do. We've saved over 50 residents money each month, and all in total over 200 plus now have television service that is included in their rent without any increase whatsoever. This was revenge for the representative talking to Miss T in such a negative and rude tone. I couldn't be happier for my residents. Our senior citizens are some of the most precious things we all enjoy. They hold all of our wisdom. Good day. You want to make things fair? I'll show you fair. A couple of weeks ago, my kids and the neighbors decided to have a bake sale. We live in a tourist area with high foot traffic, and the kids made a lot of money. I tell the kids I ought to charge them for the labor. I said I'd help bake and ingredients so they learn the concept of net gains, but instead I'll donate to their cause and just to bring me back the money I lent them to make change. I love seeing the kids be entrepreneurial, work so hard, and get so excited at their success. After a couple of hours, the neighbor's son decides he's bored and wants to go home, so he tells my kid, "When you're done, come by and deliver half my money." Mine says, "Hey, that's not fair. If you're leaving, we should split the money now." Mind you, the bulk of their sales was my baking. Neighbor kid gets upset, but my kid sticks to what he said. They split the money and the kid leaves in a huff. My kid comes in a few hours later, having lugged home all the gear and cleaned up, annoyed that the neighbor kid got annoyed at them. Then I got a knock on the door. It's the neighbor's mom, with the kid who's still pouting. Mom's holding a receipt. Mom explains that they purchased a bunch of stuff for the bake sale. It cost a lot of money, and it's not fair that my kid is making money off their stuff, and that they should be compensated for what they purchased. The receipt lists a bunch of items I immediately see they didn't use, like 2 boxes of cereal when they used 1, napkins that I'd ended up providing, but whatever. And never mind that her son went home early and left mine to clean up, and never mind that I'd been churning out batches of cookies all morning. I'm irked that they've taken what was a fun, cheerful day of kids making money hands over fist and shown up at my door making me engage in a super awkward conversation because they assume their kid can't be wrong. So I say, "Of course," and fetch my receipts. I sit down and, in front of them and out loud, calculate the cost of lemonade and cups used. I calculate the cost of flour, sugar, chocolate chips, vanilla, and butter per batch of cookies multiplied by the number of batches made. I toss in the baking soda for free, so generous. I even subtract the value of leftover cookies. Did I mention I made a lot of cookies? The neighbor kid has to hand over $23. They got pretty quiet all of a sudden. I thanked the lady for making sure things were fair and offered her a plate of cookies to take home. She declined. Am I the jerk? I reported my car missing after my husband took it to attend his brother's wedding. My husband, who's 35, does not have a car. He sold his old car to help pay for his brother's wedding. I did not agree on this, but he had this car before we got together, so it's a shared property. Besides that, I have my own car, so that didn't affect me until my husband started complaining about having to commute to work and hang out places. He tried to get me to let him drive my car several times, but I stood firm and put a boundary, making him understand that my car will never be driven by him. One of the reasons why is because of how bad of a driver he is. His brother lives out of town. My husband asks if he can drive my car to the wedding, but I refused. But not because I'm not invited, another story for another day, but because, like I said, my car is off limits. He threw a fit, calling me unreasonable to let him take public transportation because he can barely stand it for 10 minutes, let alone hours. I said it wasn't my problem, which irritated him, but made him stop arguing about it. The day that he was supposed to travel out of town, I woke up at 10 a.m. and couldn't find my car key. I went outside and I couldn't find my car either. I was beyond upset. I called him, and like I expected, he took it and was on his way to the other town. I lost it and told him I gave him no permission to take it for the whole 5 days and said that if he won't turn around with it and come home, then I'd call the cops and report it missing. His response was, "You wouldn't dare do that, because you know what would happen." I hung up on him, then immediately called the police and told them about my situation. I did not tell them my husband took it because they'd think it's a family dispute and decide to not get involved. I just reported it missing. 2 hours later, I got a call from my husband saying he was back in town and was being held at our local police station. I went to the station and talked to the cops. My husband made a scene there, saying over and over again that I gave him permission to take it and said I was acting out of jealousy and spite because he was going to attend an event that I was not invited to. I took my car and went home, but he had to stay a little longer. He came home in the evening and went on a rage fit about how I created an awful situation and almost caused him to miss his brother's wedding. He called me vindictive, bitter, and a lunatic to call the police on him and try to accuse him of stealing my car. He had to leave the same day to be able to get there with his family and decided to extend his stay and still hasn't gotten back yet. Right now, his mom and brother are blasting me for what happened and calling me spiteful. Not the jerk, but I get the feeling that there's a lot more going on here. Your husband sold his car to help pay for his brother's wedding, even though he needed it to commute? Is your husband prone to making bad decisions? And he paid for his brother's wedding, even though you, his wife, were not invited to it? I'm sorry, but what kind of marriage is this? OP. Yeah, he and his brother are very close. I'm on bad terms. Also, we don't talk at all with his brother because he kept accusing me of trying to drive a wedge between him and my husband. He can think whatever he wants, but none of his claims are true. Unfortunately, my husband and his mom think I'm the bad guy here. In my opinion, you should start stashing cash away and documenting everything that you own that is not subject to community property, if you live in a place with community property laws. I don't see this marriage lasting much longer, and your husband has already demonstrated that he will lie to the authorities to get himself out of trouble. It didn't work this time, but you should protect yourself. That's all assuming you're not already consulting a divorce attorney, who can give you much better advice than I, who am definitely not an attorney, could. Everyone sucks here. Why are you even together? Just break up. You both sound like absolute nightmares. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
I know Reddit tells everyone to get divorced, but sometimes, it's kind of warranted.
My Karen sister took money from our safe. My little sister, who's 16, has had her fair share of behavior issues throughout the past few years. She doesn't keep up with school, lies, and was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, along with everyone else in our family. Since the beginning of this year, her behavior has gotten worse. She's been frequently lying and doctoring stories, as well as getting in trouble with the law, in and out of the house with zero consequences. A few weeks ago, she had called me and told me, along with everyone else in the family, that she had bought me tickets to my favorite artist's concert in the fall. I obviously questioned it and kept telling her not to lie to me, but she insisted it was true, so I got very excited. 2 weeks later, I noticed that she kept buying very expensive items such as a computer, new shoes, makeup, more electronics, etc. But I figured it was because she got a new job and was making better money. For the more expensive items like the computer, she told me it was a gift from a family member for her birthday, which was the week prior. She even went as far as to fake a phone call with said family member to thank them for such a wonderful gift. While she was having the time of her life, I was on a completely different path. A week before her birthday, my car's engine blew. I should note that I'm a college student who works minimum wage, and it would have been out of my price range to even try to afford a new engine, so the car got towed. I was devastated. My parents and my grandma decided to help me by getting me some money together, about $6,000, and giving it to me to buy a new car. About a week after I noticed my sister was buying these expensive products, I finally found my dream car. My parents and I went to grab the money from our safe to go and buy the car when we realized about $3,000 was missing from the envelopes we put together. My dad immediately checked my little sister's bank account to find a $1,200 deposit via ATM that week. We also found receipts from purchases that she made with the remaining cash. When we confronted my sister, she said she didn't know why she took the money. I was, and still am, devastated that my own blood would steal from me. But my parents, more so my dad, whose sister did the same thing, wants me to forgive her because she's apologized for it. I told him no way, and that she has yet to apologize to me, and that I have no intentions on having her in my life when she's acting like this. My dad says she's going through a tough time and needs our help. So, am I the jerk? Update. I want to add that as soon as my parents found out, we took her to return as much as we could. They were also devastated. Invited my neighbor to church, now she wants nothing to do with me. My neighbor, Emma, and I, both 30-ish female, are on smile at each other and say hi, how are you every time kind of talking terms with each other. It's generally a pleasant family, especially her daughter who has cerebral palsy and is as charming as any 10-year-old you would find. Saw Emma in their garden yesterday, and I got to talking with her when she brought up how her daughter feels a little lonely at times because of being homeschooled and not having many friends around. Obviously, her condition means she can't go around to the park and play as much. Actually, she even prefers to stay at home reading or watching shows. She only maybe needs similar-aged people to talk to at times, as she has no siblings. So I suggest that my neighbor attend church a few Sundays in order to avail a sort of service the local church provides, where they make book clubs or flower clubs or bake clubs by grouping together some of the kids who are interested from the community. So if she signs up Alex for such a thing, the church would send some potential friends to their house and do activities and have a chat with Alex. But the problem is that you can't just fill out a form for this. You have to go to church and talk a bit to some mothers or the pastor before requesting to hold the clubs at your own place. This is something people do for each other, and it will be unsafe to send anyone over to a stranger's house. Emma may as well stop going after assuring the other mothers that she is trustworthy. Emma got offended at this and told me not to try to lure her into my religion. Church was a personal choice and that she didn't want to become a fanatic by volunteering to be brainwashed every week. I am a practicing Christian, not very diligent in it though, but all I suggested was that she just make acquaintance enough at the church to help Alex make friends. Nevertheless, she called me a jerk for pushing religion on her and her daughter. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Don't take it personally, but activities at a church are centered around your beliefs, contrary to city or state-provided activities that are bent by the law to be inclusive of all. Also, the mother might think that exposing her kid to people that will tend to try to convince her to believe in your religion, it would not be good for her daughter. You're the jerk. The sad part is, you don't even realize how disgusting your actions were. You're using your neighbor's situation to try roping her into your own twisted beliefs. Don't be surprised when the whole neighborhood finds out what kind of a person you really are. When will you people learn that just because you believe in BS does not give you the right to force it onto people who actually have good hearts and care about the world? Ew. Yes. Don't try to lure people into your religion. And that church is pretty gross, only being interested in helping kids of families who are religious. You're the jerk. Religion is not a topic to approach lightly with someone you're just on a friendly, smile-based kind of thing. Yes, you're the jerk. That is exactly how it works. First, try to get them in your church, then do some activities, get attached to other people, and bam! Now you can as well convert if you want us to help you out further. You may have good intentions, but your neighbor is right to be suspicious. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her neighbor? Please let us know.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you love the Lord, good for you, but you probably don't want to talk about it on Reddit. They'll tear you a new one.
Am I the jerk for not wanting to be a dad? I, male 29, had a kid when I was 19. I wasn't ready to be a dad, and I asked her to not go through with it. She refused and decided to keep it, so I agreed to pay child support, but I wouldn't be involved in her life. I didn't tell my family about any of this. Well now, after 10 years of this arrangement, just 3 months ago when I was at work, I received a barrage of angry messages from my parents asking me if I have a kid. Apparently, my ex had told them everything because she is sick and wants someone to look after the kid since her own family refused to do it. They were mad at me, telling me it was very selfish to hide their grandchild from them. I'm an only child, and she is their only grandchild, so they agreed to look after the kid and brought her into our home. Yes, I live with my parents to help them with the expenses. I told them that I can't stop them from doing this, but I still don't want to be her dad, and they agreed. She has been living with us for the past 3 months, but everyone forgot about our agreement. 2 days ago, my parents left her with me to go somewhere. I told them I don't want to babysit, but no one listened to me. As soon as they left, she started coming into my room with different excuses. I finally got annoyed and told her to go to her room and not to come out until her grandparents come home. My parents come back and freaked out when they found out. They called me a jerk for being a horrible dad, but I never wanted to be a dad, and I made it clear several times. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. The kid is 10 years old. Her mother is apparently so unwell that she has to reach out to literal strangers to ensure her kid gets care, and you can't even be civil for one afternoon. Have you even considered how the kid feels? You're the jerk. From a person to person, have you no civility? Must you be a miserable entity to a 10-year-old? What happened to you to make you so unkind? It appears OP hasn't matured much between the ages of 19 to 29 years old. Seriously, OP, I get you didn't want to have a kid, but you still partook in the decisions that led to this. Yeah, your parents are slightly the jerks for going back on their agreement, but you're taking this out on your daughter, whose mother is sick. So now this girl is without her mother and stuck with a father who's acting like an inconvenienced bratty teenager. She's 10. She's past the age of being a screaming kid you just have to clean up all the time. You can share hobbies and interests with her. Be a good, empathetic person, and maybe have her play some video games with you or something. Make her feel wanted. Your parents are already taking over the role of caring for her and parenting her. If you keep acting like this, she will never want anything to do with you in the future if you suddenly grow up and decide you actually want to be in her life. You'll also have very bad karma. Edit. And to everyone who's like, well, he's being forced to be a parent against his will, no, he's not. If he moves out of his parents' house, which at 29 years old he should be able to do, problem solved. If he's going to remain there, the least he can do is be kind and respectful to his daughter, not just tell her to be quiet and go to her room, making her feel even more unwanted than she already feels. Exactly. Countless kids were never planned, but you got this woman pregnant anyway. It no longer matters if you want to be a dad. You are a dad. Sure, you have the choice to abandon your daughter and be a deadbeat if you want, but then you have to live with the fact that you're a deadbeat, child support or not. Money may help a bit, but she's a human being, and you're not there for her. You're an emotional deadbeat, and honestly, that's worse in my opinion. Money is not the most important factor when it comes to determining if you're a good dad. All the child support does is save yourself legally. Your parents are right, you are a horrible dad. Seriously, shame on you. Words cannot express how excruciatingly awful you are. You're the jerk. I completely disagree. Is OP a jerk for not being civil to a 10-year-old for a few hours? Sure. But he is not a jerk for not wanting to be a father. He already told the mother of the kid and his parents that he doesn't want a kid. He made that clear from the moment she got pregnant. He made that clear when his parents decided to look after the kid. Those are choices made by other people who were informed of the circumstances. He is not the dad to that kid. He's nothing more than a donor at this point. If you want to be a parent, good for you, but you don't get to judge other people who don't. He doesn't need to be there for her. The mother made the choice knowing she was going to be a single mother. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean this guy is a jerk. He told her he wants no part, she did it anyway, and he paid child support. OP's baby mama is a massive jerk. OP's parents are jerks, and OP is slightly a jerk for responding to the kid like that. OP did nothing wrong in regards to raising her. He doesn't owe her emotional support. You're the jerk. So move out. If you don't want to be a dad, go get your own place and pay the child support you paid your ex to your parents. They can also get help from the state as official foster parents, but might need to take courses. Your daughter needs someone to live with besides her mother who is sick. I would have reached out to extended family too if I was the only one able to care for my kid, and I was too sick to do so. Sending her to her room because she's such an inconvenience to you is such a jerk move. She's still a human being who recently was uprooted from a life that she knew. You're the jerk. I get that you never intended to be a dad, but the least you can do is now act like an adult. She didn't choose to be part of your life either. She's just trying to make the best of a new and probably very scary situation. As long as you're both living there, you've got to at least do the bare minimum, which means actually spending time with her instead of sending her to her room so that you don't have to deal with her. Everyone sucks here. I say all this as a woman. Your ex should have never contacted you from the start. You guys decided a long time ago that you wouldn't be involved, and she agreed. I feel for her being a single mother, and her family sucks, but ultimately she decided to take on the kid herself. She should have handled it by herself. Your parents suck for taking on the kid and not respecting your choice to not be involved. That all being said, this girl was brought back into your life, and while you may not like it, and while you don't have to act like a father to her, You're a jerk for treating her like a nuisance. This kid has done nothing wrong and had no choice in being brought into your home. Shutting her out is just messed up on a human level. Again, you don't have to be her father. You should have looked at this like she was your niece or something and treated her with basic respect and kindness. I'm sure people will argue against me saying that you need to take responsibility as a father, but I just disagree. Again, what I do think you need to do is take responsibility as an adult and temporary caretaker and not shun or neglect any kid that is under your temporary supervision. So are you basically saying that for the single mom who could be seriously ill, the best option was to let the daughter go into foster care instead of contacting the paternal grandparents? Get out of here. This man is 29 years old. If he doesn't want to be a dad, he can move out. But the grandparents do not suck for taking in the kid. Okay, so nobody is going to like this, but not the jerk. You're saying you made it clear you did not want to be a dad to your ex from the beginning. No one would be this harsh on a mom for adopting out her kid if she didn't want to be a mom. My mom's biological dad didn't want to be a dad back in the 60s, but he was made to, and he treated my mom and her brother like dirt. He was a jerk, yeah, but he wouldn't have been if he wasn't forced to be a dad when he didn't want kids. My mom and uncle were much better off when he signed away his rights as a dad, and my grandma met the only man I recognize as my grandpa. You aren't a jerk for blowing off a kid you didn't even want to have. You didn't want any of this. She made the decision to have the baby, and you made it clear you didn't want to. You messed up at 19. So many people do. I would lawyer up, go to court, and try to get rid of any legal responsibility you have. Also, you mentioned you lived with your parents to help them. If they won't respect your wishes on this, it may be time to branch out on your own. Best of luck. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
Oh, I really can't wait to read the comments we get about this one.
Natural occurring colors? You got it. In the early 2000s, I worked at a Canadian casino. The place had so many ridiculous rules, including some very particular rules about makeup. The makeup rules were as follows. 1. No fake eyelashes. 2. No fake fingernails or fingernail extensions. 3. No makeup that is not a natural color. The natural color one confused me. What is deemed natural? Who decides what is and isn't natural? I asked my manager for clarification, but she couldn't give me any. Just keep it natural. Use natural occurring colors and you'll be fine. This did not sit well with me. Cue malicious compliance. My aunt has her master's in environmental science. I went to her house one evening and picked her brain about natural occurring colors. She informed me that, scientifically, natural occurring colors are colors that can be found directly in nature. She even showed me a textbook that directly spoke about naturally occurring colors. I borrowed the textbook and highlighted the paragraphs that specified this. Keep in mind, this was well before you could just Google something. The only way to back up the claim was to carry that 750-page textbook to work with me. My next shift, I went all out. Green eyeliner, eggplant-colored eyeshadow, yellow nail polish on one hand and mango-colored on the other hand. I hit the floor to work, and within the first few minutes, I get hauled into my manager's office. OP, what do you think you're doing? You cannot wear these colors. You know our policy states natural occurring colors only when it comes to makeup. Head to the staff bathroom immediately and remove it. Wordlessly, I headed to the staff bathroom. But instead of taking the makeup off, I went to my locker, grabbed the textbook, and marched back to my manager's office. Excuse me, manager? I am wearing naturally occurring colors. Here, look at this textbook that specifically states what naturally occurring are, by definition. I watched her face change as she read the book. First, she looked upset, then worried, and then finally resigned herself to what was happening. OP, do you really need to be that type of person? Me. The type that follows the rules? I thought that's what you wanted me to do. She asked me to head back to the door. For the remaining time I was employed there, I wore whatever color makeup I wanted, and so did almost all of my coworkers. They tried coming out with new rules, but could never get the wording right. Forget stupid rules. Malicious compliance for the win. Am I the jerk for calling out my stepbrother on his Instagram post? I, male 17, and my mom, female 39, moved in with my stepdad, male 46, and stepbrother, who's 15, about 2 years ago. So I have a nice sneaker collection that I have amassed through working a casual job and reselling sneakers. Now stepbrother, who hasn't shown any interest in my sneaker collection previously, I guess is at the age now where it matters more. He's been coming into my room more often to have a look at the collection, and he has also recently grown into the same size as me. This is important. Recently, he's been asking me to let him wear some of the shoes in my collection. I'm opposed to this because 1, they're my shoes. I feel like I should have the final say in who gets to wear them. 2, he's not careful and absolutely trashes his shoes. 3, common sense, but wearing a shoe decreases its value significantly. I like to hold some unworn in case the price spikes. So every time he's asked, I've told him no. Recently, he told me that he has a very important outing he's going to. He's just going out with friends and wants to wear some of the shoes. I told him no, but this time he threw an absolute fit and got stepdad involved. Stepdad told me that I'm being greedy and that I should just let stepbrother wear one pair since I have so many. I told him that I value each and every one of them and told him the resale value of the pair, and stepbrother was absolutely shocked. This devolved into an argument about me paying rent, when really I paid for the retail price and not the resale price, which he does not seem to understand. Stepdad and stepbrother left when they realized I wasn't budging. I thought the situation was over. I head off to work on Saturday. However, on the bus ride home, I was scrolling through Instagram and stepbrother posted a picture of himself wearing the exact same shoe that I did not let him wear. I was angry and I commented, "Why are you wearing my shoes?" He deleted my comment, but it seemed like it was too late. Some of his friends saw, which embarrassed him because he had told them that the shoes were his. He told stepdad about what happened, who called me in a fury, asking me why did I have to embarrass his son like that, and that the shoes were worth nothing. I yelled back at him that stepbrother had no business wearing my stuff, and I had the feeling that stepdad encouraged it too, so forget you both, and I hung up. When I got home, I full-on got yelled at. He told me that I should be lucky that I'm allowed to live under this roof. My mom stepped in to defend me, and now they've been arguing for the past day and a half. I asked stepbrother to give me my shoes back, and he did. I told him to never touch my stuff again, and have been holding it up in my room since. Things are really tense in the house now. So Reddit, am I the jerk for not allowing my brother to wear my shoes, and then embarrassing him on Instagram when he did so anyways? Not the jerk. Your stepdad sounds horrible. You're 17. He shouldn't be demanding rent or threatening to throw you out. It's his job as the parent to provide housing. Your stepbrother deserved to be called out. He stole something to pass off as his own, and it's his own fault that he got negative reactions when the truth was out. Also, OP should consider buying a doorknob with a lock and key or an electronic lock, something he can lock up while he's not there. Something tells me stepdad is the type of guy who would lose his crap if he did this. He very much seems like a, "you don't get to lock your door in my house" kind of guy. Tell him if he wants to start charging you rent, you're gonna start charging his son with theft. He knew you were part of the package when he married your mom and moved you into his house. You're 17. They can't charge you rent legally. Your stepdad is an all-around jerk, in this case at least. Maybe he should encourage his son to work for what he wants rather than stealing it. Am I the jerk for not giving my sister alone time and saying she can leave? I'm 26 and Anna is 30. My sister Anna lives in a different state, used to live with her husband but got divorced last year and said she was feeling lonely and misses us, so she came over for 2 weeks. She wanted to spend a week at my place and a week at our mom's, but we eventually agreed on 4 days at mine. So Anna arrived a couple days ago and yesterday asked me if we could let her have some time to herself. She had caught up with an old friend and wanted to invite him over, so if me and my husband could give her a few hours in the evening, she said to go for a movie and she'd pay for the tickets. I told her no, we're not planning on going anywhere that night. Anna kept insisting that she needed some alone time and it was only for a few hours. My husband overheard some of this. We were getting kinda loud, so he told her that she needs to stop pushing me and we won't be going anywhere. Anna got pretty mad and said that we were being petty for the sake of it and didn't understand she was going through a hard time. I'd had enough, so I told her this is our house, not hers, and if she has an issue, she's free to leave. We didn't talk for a bit after that, but later she said she talked to mom and is going over to her place earlier, as it's obvious I don't want her around, and left last night. Was I just being difficult? Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If she really wants to get jiggy with it, she can go to a motel. I gave you a $50 discount and you're still not happy? I used to work at a call center for a large Canadian telecommunications company. They are a service provider for TV, internet, home phones, and cell phones. I was a customer care agent, and at the time I was working in the end of promotions department. I'd be the person you speak with when your 1 or 2 year discount was set to expire. I had been through many different departments before I was moved to the end of promotion team, so I had access to multiple discounts a regular care agent wouldn't have access to because they never changed my authorization when I was moved to the new department. This allowed me to bend the rules quite a bit when it came to renewing promotions for some customers. Now, most care agents have limited discounts they can give. Typically, the system would generate a discount for a customer account based on their tenure and services with us. That's what the company claimed, which I find to be BS, as I've seen accounts that were created back in '99 that would be tagged for only $10 off, and sometimes nothing at all, and they would have to pay in-market rates. This is where my access level came in handy. If I spoke with a customer who was super polite and gave me no trouble or stress, I would apply a better discount than what was originally tagged, especially if I see they've been with us for years and even sometimes decades. Example, tagged for $20 off. Give them $35 or $40 off instead. Now, the company always claimed to keep track if we apply discounts that a customer wouldn't be eligible for, but I think that was also BS because I did this to many accounts and it never came up during meetings with my manager. So one day I get a call, a customer that's been with the company for a year or two. Let's call him Mark. So Mark's promotion is coming to an end pretty soon and he's looking to get a new one and at the same time upgrade his services. He was on a mid-tier TV package and had 500 megabit unlimited internet. If I recall, he was probably paying around $140 per month. He wanted to move up to our highest TV package and our gigabit internet plan, which is the highest you can get for both TV and internet with this company. And this said company is not a budget service provider, so typically that combination of products would cost around $180 before taxes, and the price just climbs up depending on how many boxes you have for the TV, if you have a home phone, and if you have any extra TV add-ons. So I tell him I will gladly look into it and place him on hold. Since he was very polite and I was in a good mood, I was happy to bend the rules for him, especially after seeing he was only tagged for a $15 discount. He had a $25 discount before, so he would have been paying $10 more if he wanted to keep his services the same, and definitely a whole lot more if he upgraded to the highest package. So eventually, I come back to him with a $50 discount for 1 year. He will still be paying more for making that change, but it's a whole lot better than the $15 off that he was supposed to get initially. Now, all of a sudden, his attitude and tone does a complete 180. He starts getting angry and starts getting rude. He was talking as if he thought I was joking when I said $50 is the most we could give him. He went on a rant about how he's been with us for so many years and how he deserves to pay less than what he was paying before, and on top of that, get upgraded services. I explained that unfortunately, because he is upgrading to our highest packages, that the increase in price is inevitable. I informed him that if he wanted to, the same discount could be applied to his current services and he'd be saving $25 more than what he's been paying. Then he pulls the same card I hear so often, like, "Well, my friend has that package and is only paying $80. Or, I see newer customers getting it for so much less." Which in most cases, sure, it can happen. But with the combination of products he has, I know 100% he was just pulling these prices out of nowhere. He got angrier and was demanding that he gets a better discount. And on top of that, he wanted the Crave/Movies/HBO add-on, which cost $19.99, for free for a year, on top of that for wasting his time. I start to get frustrated and explained once again that it is not something we can do, and the $50 is the best we can offer. He asks to speak to retention, which at the time was the end of promotion department, and I explained that he's already speaking with them. He starts to lose it and says he wants to speak to a manager because he wants to pay what he feels like he should pay based on his tenure, which again was only around 2 years, which may seem like a long time, but in this kind of industry, it doesn't really mean much. We do have a dedicated team of managers that take calls when a customer is getting crazy. Their primary goal is just to defuse the situation, but they are not there to give better discounts if we already went through the best options, and they always made that very clear. I explained that a manager cannot provide a better discount, but I can still transfer him to one, as it is a company policy to get them to a manager if they request one, no matter what. So I place him on hold, and what we do is speak to the manager on the line first to explain the situation and the options we as an agent went through before escalating, and then they take the call from there. Usually you're supposed to disconnect from the call once you patch the customer through, but sometimes I like to stick around and mute myself just to listen to the manager tell the customer the exact same thing I already told them. Their reactions are usually priceless. So I explained to the manager, we'll call him Fred, that I had already offered the customer a way better discount than what we had before. I was worried that they would question why or how I gave them more than what we were tagged for, but this manager didn't seem to care. I explained how he had wanted to pay less than what he used to pay while upgrading to our highest package, and now on top of that have a $20 add-on given to him for free for a year. Fred scoffs because they understand how ridiculous that was and told me to patch him through. I add Mark to the call, introduce him to Fred, and explain that they will take the call from there. Now, all of a sudden, he's acting very polite again and says,
"Oh, thank you so much, OP. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care."
and continues this act while he talks to the manager as if he wasn't just screaming at the top of his lungs at me moments ago. I stick around to hear the conversation play out. Fred does a quick rundown of what Mark was asking us to do just to make sure nothing was missed, and Mark says, "Yup, that all sounds right to me." Then Fred pretty much tells him what he is asking for cannot be done, and that I had already offered the best discount we can provide, and explained that most customers pay way more for what he is being upgraded to. He starts getting angry again and starts yelling that he is being mistreated as a long-term customer and is threatening to cancel all of his services with us and move to a competitor. Fred says he's sorry he feels that way and that if he would like to, they can start the cancellation procedure for him. Mark had had enough and hung up right after. I got a kick from hearing that and went on with my day. A month goes by. I'm taking calls and having a good day. It's slow, not a lot of callers, but the ones I do get have been very nice. And suddenly, a call comes in. The account pops up. I do a quick look over the account summary and see the customer's name. It looks familiar. I check the account's previous interactions and see mine and Fred's from a month ago. A big smile goes across my face as I am speaking to none other than Mark, calling us back again. Now, this kind of thing is very rare. With a company this big, we typically have a lot of callers and a lot of employees, so it's extremely uncommon that I speak to the same person more than once. I'm thinking because it was a slow day, they had given early leave to the agents who wanted it, so there must not have been a lot of agents online taking calls, thus having this call routed to me since I wasn't available. I do the standard greeting. "Thank you for calling, how can I help?" But in the inside, I've got a grin on my face because I know he's most likely calling us back because his discount had expired and his price has gone up. He's either calling to cancel or to try and get a discount again. I was right on the nose with that one. He calls saying that his discount has expired and he's looking to get a new one. Now, Mark didn't seem to recognize that he was talking to me again. He thought I was just a different agent because he mentioned he was given an offer from someone about a month ago that he was looking to accept. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. As per our last call, you said you wanted a discount based off your tenure. Sure thing. As a matter of fact, the system has already generated a whopping $15 off based on that. I explained that unfortunately, because he's calling after his discount has ended, the original discount we had offered is now expired, and now we only have a $15 discount available. He starts to lose it again. Now, in some cases, this actually does happen, where if a discount isn't accepted before the other one expires, the new offer also expires and cannot be added. I can agree, it's some slimy stuff that this company does so they can get more money. In this case, because the original $50 discount was never supposed to be given in the first place, I was able to say this and only offer what he was really tagged for. Once again, he begins to lose it. It plays out the same as it did before. I explain that this is the best we can offer. He throws a fit, wants to speak to a manager. Again, managers are not there to apply better discounts. Sometimes we do have something called a documented promise, where if in the notes someone was offered something, say $50 off, and it didn't go through, we can still apply it. He could have lied and said he accepted it and it never went through, and the documented promise policy would have made it so that we had to give him that discount. In this case, because Fred and I both wrote in the notes that he declined that offer, it was gone for good. I once again transfer him to a manager and stick around to hear the fallout. The manager did not budge, told him the same thing, that $15 off was the only option, and once again, it ends with him hanging up. I unfortunately never figured out what happened with Mark's account, but here's what could have happened. 1. He's still paying the in-market price for his services, which is a lot more than what he was paying before. 2. He accepted the $15 off and is still paying more than before. 3. He canceled with us and moved to a competitor. One less problematic, rude, and entitled customer. You want a ticket? Fine, you get a ticket. I work at a big online company that does lead generation for real estate. And prior to lockdown, I was working on our tech support team. But for one reason or another, not relevant to this post, they decided to move me and my teammates to the success team, a similar job but less techy. This happened on March 16th, the day we became work from home. Now, I realized pretty early on that I was never actually removed from any of the support roles' access. I could still view things I shouldn't, like, say, how many tickets they had open. In my day, we would finish all of our tickets in a day, to the point where we would watch Netflix and fight over inbound calls. At this time, they had over 3,000 open tickets. I'm a very nice person, very customer-oriented, so instead of adding to the ticket queue and making the customer wait a month or two for an answer, if they had called into the success team, I would try to resolve their issue now if I could, instead of sending them to the support team like I was technically supposed to for tech support. But not this customer. This customer called in screaming, and I'm good with de-escalation. I am. I tried to explain that I could help if she had let me. I tried to explain that I used to be part of the tech team. Heck, I even tried giving her their phone number because that is a faster way of getting help. But no, she just kept screaming at me to put a ticket in for her because she's having notification issues and she needs a ticket put in because her notifications aren't working. Literally broken record style. Why she couldn't put the ticket in herself, I have no idea. But you know what, ma'am? Sure, absolutely. There you go. I just put that ticket in, and I'm sure the tech team will get to it as soon as they can. They were 6 weeks behind in answering tickets at that point. I have no idea what happened beyond that, since it is a fairly big company, but I'm sure she called and screamed at someone else when the ticket wasn't answered right away. Still made me laugh though, because her issue was a fairly easy one to fix that I could actually have fixed for her in about 5 minutes if she'd have let me. But instead, I did what she asked and put in a ticket. Entitled neighbor keeps stealing from my garden. Big mistake. Well, I should have known that no good deed goes unpunished. We have a small vegetable and herb garden in the corner of our yard. 2 neighbors have the ability and my permission to reach over the fence and snip off any herbs they need. We always grow much more than we can use. One neighbor has been doing it for years with no problems. He takes a spring or two a few times a week and always asks me if he needs more than usual. He repays me in beautiful roses, but I would have no problem with not getting them in return. The other neighbor never cooked, so he never took any. Now he has a new girlfriend, and she happened to introduce herself while I was planting the herbs, so I offered her some once it has a chance to grow a bit. So of course, 2 weeks after I planted, she snips off all but a few leaves off of every herb. 2 weeks, I was livid. My boyfriend went over and explained that it was too soon, the plants were tiny, not ready, etc. He's much nicer than I am. The neighbor apologized profusely and said the girlfriend wouldn't be going anywhere near the herbs until I specifically allow it. A week later, I catch this jerk out there with a pair of scissors, but it's only been a week, and there's nothing to snip out there yet. Apparently, she can't make meatballs without parsley, and the grocery store within walking distance is too far to go. One of my plants has 3 leaves on it. Seriously. The other neighbor doesn't dare take anything before mid-July. Certainly, he would never touch anything before I did. We looked at each other for a few seconds, and then I just said, "Please get your herbs at this store from now on." I can't believe I managed to think of that. Usually I think of a great comeback 10 minutes after the fact. She turned bright red and went in the house. Hopefully, she embarrassed herself enough to stay away. I don't want to have problems with this neighbor. He's nice and quiet and doesn't bother anyone. Tomorrow it will be a week since I caught her again. We'll see what happens. Am I the jerk for telling my dad his girlfriend didn't buy me a Starbucks drink? I, 17 female, have been living with my dad, who's 45, his girlfriend of 2 years, who's 33, and her daughter, who's 13, for a couple of months now, while my mom, who's 40, is visiting my sick grandfather in Sweden. I've only ever stayed at my dad's on weekends, so it's been hard getting used to living with his girlfriend and her kid full time. The kid is super whiny and pretty spoiled because girlfriend dotes on her, so I usually just stay in my room. Today, girlfriend was taking her daughter on a special outing because she passed a math test, and my dad suggested that I go with them for a girls' day out. I wanted to say no, but I knew that he wanted me to get to know his girlfriend and his girlfriend's daughter better, so I agreed. He gave his girlfriend $300 to spend during the outing. We spent the day going in and out of stores girlfriend's daughter liked in the mall complex. Girlfriend ended up buying her a ton of clothes, makeup, and other stuff that I don't remember. On our way back home, girlfriend stopped at the Starbucks because daughter wanted a drink and some cake pops. She ordered a drink for her and her daughter and 2 cake pops. I asked her if I could get something too, and she said she ran out of money and she'd get me something next time. When they got their order, I asked if I could have one of the cake pops, and girlfriend said that it was her daughter's treat for hard work and it would be wrong for me to take one since I didn't do anything that deserved being rewarded. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty upset. When we got back home, my dad saw their drinks and asked where mine was. I told him that I wasn't allowed to get one because I don't deserve it. His girlfriend got upset and said I was twisting her words, and the daughter just said I was being greedy and was jealous of her. I know I'm not entitled to a drink or a cake pop, but I also don't think it's wrong to be a little annoyed. Am I the jerk? Oh, sweetie, not the jerk. And I want you to know that you absolutely were entitled to a drink and a cake pop or another treat of your choosing. Your dad gave her $300 that was meant to be spent on all 3 of you for the day out. Sure, her daughter may have earned something special for her hard work at school, but from the sound of it, he intended for all of you to get treated a bit. And it's disgusting that she would go to a coffee shop and get things for herself and her daughter, but not for you. As someone older than your dad, even, I can tell you that his girlfriend's behavior was super not okay, and not the way she should be treating her partner's kid. None of my friends would ever treat their stepkids or partner's kids that way in a million years. I'm so sorry that happened to you, and I'm really glad you told your dad. She deserves to get yelled at. OP, thank you. You've really made me feel better. You are nowhere near in the wrong for being annoyed about the way they treated you, and the 2 of them should be ashamed of themselves for manipulating the situation, and by extension, your father. Once they got called out for their nasty behavior, the $300 was for all 3 of you. The least they could have done was give you $3 for a cake pop. The fact that they didn't even want to do that should be a clear indication to your father that they cannot be trusted around you. You are definitely not the jerk his girlfriend was. But spill the tea. What was your dad's reaction to girlfriend's lame excuse? OP, this happened 30 minutes ago, and before he said anything, I just went up to my room. I'm hearing yelling from downstairs though. I love my dad a lot, and he's always looked out for me, so I don't think he wouldn't believe me. Update. I just finished talking to my dad. I explained everything that happened at the mall, and he apologized and said he'll be returning everything that was bought and will be taking a day off work tomorrow so we could do something together. He also put up girlfriend and daughter in a hotel so I can have space from them and said they'll be staying there until my mom gets back. Once I'm ready to see them, he said they will apologize to me, and once my mom comes back, he's going to have a talk with his girlfriend. Am I the jerk for proposing to my girlfriend at my brother's wedding? My brother and his wife got married last week. It was a big beach wedding with about 100 people. While the bride and groom were doing their photo shoot that took an hour, the guests were walking down the beach, having some snacks that were served, talking to each other, etc. We were waiting for the dinner to be served. My girlfriend and I had been together for 10 years and we have a kid together. Marriage just never came up. We are both really not the romantic type. When our son was born, I jokingly told her I'd propose to her on a beach at sunset someday. So after the wedding, we were walking down the beach. We were alone. No one was even paying any attention to us at all because there were 100 people there. I just asked her, "So, beach at sunset, will you marry me?" She said yes. We had a good laugh, took a selfie together, and slowly walked back to the site of the reception. We haven't told anyone that we are getting married yet. It will be a courthouse wedding anyway. 2 days ago, my girlfriend posted that selfie on her social media, tagged me, and wrote a caption, "Finally marrying the love of my life," and a sunset beach proposal. Now, everyone who knew us knew it was a sarcastic caption and knew it was more of a joking post than anything else. Brother and sister-in-law called us very upset hours after that post. Sister-in-law said we ridiculed their wedding with our post. Brother said I'm the jerk for proposing at someone else's wedding. Am I the jerk? I was ready to say you're the jerk, but you didn't propose in front of anybody. You didn't even announce it at the reception, and you waited 2 days to post it, so not the jerk. Sister-in-law is the one who's ridiculous here. I actually agree with you on this. Had any of the other guests noticed, then a definite you're the jerk. But the way this was under the radar, I'd go with not the jerk. Why? It wasn't during any part of the wedding. Because proposing during a wedding, the reception is part of the wedding event, is a huge no-no. Had someone else noticed it, then that would have been the topic of conversation, not the wedding, which is why it is a no-no. Since that didn't happen in this case, that's why I said not the jerk. The whole reason you shouldn't propose at someone's wedding is because the attention should be on the bride and groom, and because it would be rude, insensitive, etc. to steal the attention from them. If you and your now fiance were alone, didn't tell anyone until after the wedding, and literally nobody knew about the engagement at the time, therefore you didn't steal any attention from the ones getting married, then I would say not the jerk. This reminds me of a post where a similar thing happened at a destination wedding, except the proposal was a day or two before the ceremony. They told no one, and the bride and groom didn't find out until like 5 years later when they all returned to that same destination. And still, the bride and groom were bent out of shape. Soft, you're the jerk, since you didn't make a big scene, but don't propose at someone else's wedding unless you have permission from the bride and groom beforehand. You have 364 other days to make a proposal. You're the jerk. It took you 10 years to make this decision? On virtually the one day it could be controversial. Over 3,650 days to choose from. I don't care if a million Redditors say not the jerk. You did your brother wrong and you know it. You're just here trying to find some validation to be the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for what he did or not? Please let us know.
If there's one thing I've learned from Reddit, it's that people make way too big a deal when it comes to wedding stuff.
Am I the jerk for going home right after I found out that my future mother-in-law lied about not bringing kids on this family trip? I, 33 female, am a mother of 2 girls who are 7 and 5. Their dad passed from cancer and it was a very hard time for both his and my family. I met my now fiancé, Jack, 36 male, 2 years ago. He's very sweet and adores both of them equally. However, his mom is a bit of a harsh view on single moms, especially with how low my income is compared to his. He's a doctor. I tried my best to have a good, respectful relationship with her, and she started to respond positively, though I noticed that she had excluded my kids a number of times from a number of occasions. Future mother-in-law informed us of a 3-day family trip that will be a child-free event. She said it's because it involves going to bars and doing activities that aren't family-oriented. She told me I needed to leave my daughters with someone before Jack and I could come on the trip, and I immediately had my sister come and stay with them at home. The trip was supposed to be by plane, 3-hour flight. We were late, but Jack said he intended to arrive late so that we wouldn't have to wait for too long. I saw his mom and dad there. We talked as we waited for sister-in-law and brother-in-law. I then saw them coming towards us with their 3 kids behind them. I was confused. I looked at future mother-in-law and she avoided eye contact. I immediately asked sister-in-law why she brought her kids and whether she was aware that this wasn't a family-friendly trip. Sister-in-law and her husband looked confused and said there was no such thing, but I told them what future mother-in-law had told me and I didn't bring my kids. Sister-in-law didn't say anything, but her husband told me that future mother-in-law must have lied and told me this story to prevent me from bringing mine. Brother-in-law adores them, and he too sees how inappropriate future mother-in-law is behaving. Sister-in-law yelled at him, and I lashed out both at Jack and future mother-in-law and called her horrible, then I walked off. Jack told me to hold on for a minute, but I canceled my ticket and went home. The family had to get on the plane, and after Jack got home, we had a big fight. He said no one enjoyed the trip because I caused everyone to fight by how I reacted. I told him she excluded my daughters, but he said that his mom is entitled to her feelings, and I shouldn't expect to spring the girls on her all the time when she still doesn't consider them as close as her other grandkids. He promised me all that is going to change, and I just have to give them time, and that I shouldn't have walked off and canceled my ticket like that. Not the jerk. OP, run. Why is he blaming you for ruining the trip when his mother lied? And the sister-in-law got mad at her husband, whom I assume married into the family, for exposing the lie. This family is playing the "if they're not blood, they're not family" card, and that is a hard stopping point to reevaluate the marriage. Not the jerk, but I would ask your husband if he considers your kids his own, because it sounds like he doesn't. Thankfully, he's only her fiancé and not her husband. Yeah, I would have canceled Jack along with the plane ticket if he knew about the lie and said nothing. Not the jerk. Future mother-in-law is a major jerk, and so is Jack. Actually, I think he's worse than her. He still went on the trip, and he absolutely knew this was happening from the start. That should show you just how much he actually cares about you. It's awful that she won't accept your kids as her grandkids, though I guess that she is entitled to her feelings, but that doesn't mean she gets to lie to you about the trip. Jack didn't want to be late to avoid waiting. He planned it that way so that you would be forced to stay. He probably wanted you on the plane before sister-in-law showed up, and then blamed you for ruining the trip when it was his mom that lied. You and your kids deserve better. Am I the jerk for telling my family they're not in my grandparents' trust? I'm 44, female, and I have 5 kids. Twin boys who are 21, a daughter who's 16, another daughter who's 11, another son who's 9. I come from a large narcissistic family with my dad as the leader. I have 7 other siblings that are just as narcissistic. My childhood was so rough that I went to live with my grandparents in middle school and never went back. Best decision ever. My father is my grandparents' only living kid. He nearly ran my grandfather's construction business into the ground, embezzling money, which forced my grandfather's hand to repossess his business back, which hurt him because he never expected such a thing from his own kid. This damaged their relationship. My father went on to take more money out of their personal accounts and even put them on the line for a mortgage for his home. I begged and pleaded for my grandfather to pursue charges. All he ever said was, "No one will ever prosper from greed." My grandparents came out of retirement in their 70s to bring the business back to life. It was a no-brainer for me. I resigned from my job and moved back home to help them. They did the impossible and made the business a success once again, but in the same, it practically took their lives. For the last 5 years, I've been caregiver and running the business along with my sons alone, and it's no easy feat, but I've done it. Their papa has taught them everything he knows, and they love it so much that they're going to school so that they can be fully equipped to help me more with the business. Mind you, my family hasn't reached out barely at all. We see them on holidays, if that. They didn't even call when they knew my grandparents were in the hospital. My grandmother was first to transition over. The moment word was delivered about my grandfather and the process of transitioning, that's when my father found his heart. He was here every day, and in the same, this is when the disrespect started. I was subjected to listening to my parents and siblings discuss what of my grandparents would be sold and taken, who would get what, while my grandfather was laying right there in bed as they discussed this. Most times I would get up and leave the room and go cry, when I should have been laughing because I knew my grandparents had left them nothing. They have an irrevocable estate trust that's solid and structured to a T. Anyhow, on the last day, my father had the audacity to tell me that he no longer needed my help at the company, that he would be taking back over. I ignored him, asked me when did I plan on moving out because he had some offers on the home. A home that has been in our family for generations. I still ignored him. Then he told me I had 30 days to move out. My mother stated they were being fair, so there was no need for my attitude. I lost it. I screamed at the top of my lungs that my grandparents hadn't left them a dime, so crawl back to the hole they had crawled out of. It's been horrible ever since with all kinds of calls. Not the jerk, but you should proactively hire a lawyer to handle estate matters and to put a stop to any harassment. Also, don't let them be in the house alone ever, and place cameras because they will likely take anything worth value, like grandma's jewelry, etc. I'd be very careful. Definitely not the jerk. Your grandpa was right in the end, but I would definitely consult a lawyer and consider a good security system with cameras inside and out. You know there will be major drama, so cover yourself. Good luck. Am I the jerk for keeping score of my husband's incompetence? I, 24 female, and my husband, 26 male, have been together for 6 years and we have 3 kids under the age of 5. Yes, I had 3 babies in 4 years. Yes, I am tired. In general, my husband is a great guy, but he started doing something that really upsets me. The most recent example. On my husband's day off, he wanted to stay home and rest, so I went grocery shopping, came home, put all the groceries away, cleaned the house, he did clean our room, prepared everything for our son's birthday party the next day, and made dinner. Once dinner was over, I started tidying up, and he got down on the floor to stretch out a pain in his back. I tossed him a paper towel and said, "Why don't you wipe up that spill while you're down?" With a smile, because I thought he would find the paper towel floating towards his head as amusing as I did. He said, "No," got up and walked away. I was so frustrated as this had happened a few other times over the last week. I said, "You can't just say no and walk away like that. It's very rude and disrespectful to me. I asked for help with something." He said, "Did you seriously just tell me I can't say no? I am a grown man. I don't need to explain things to you. You can tell me no, I can tell you no." I told him that I actually would never just be able to tell him no because he would get very upset. I also added that it's not that he can't say no, I just wish he would talk things out with me as a team, such as, "No, I don't have time right now," or "No, but I can get to it later." We went back and forth a few times and just ended up basically agreeing to try and listen to each other more. It really bothered me that he said I could tell him no anytime, as that has never been true in our relationship, so I tested it out. All day Saturday, I tried telling him no about little things. Will you make that appointment for me? No. Will you go get me a trash bag? No. Will you grab me some lunch? No. I didn't put my foot down on any of it. I just started with a no and would go to walk away, and he would either reason with me, convince me, or get frustrated with me each time, and each time I would end up doing it, like I always have. The next morning, he asked me to do something, and I put my foot down and said I didn't want to do it, and he would have to. He got really upset and asked why I was being so difficult, so I told him this. Yesterday, I told you no 11 times. 11 times you got frustrated with me or did not accept the no. Not even one time did you accept my no. He said the fact I kept track and said no purposely to prove a point was toxic, and if he did that with me, I would be really mad. I told him the fact I needed to keep track to prove a point was toxic, when he should want to fix the situation just because it was something that bothered me. He still stands behind my behavior being toxic. So, am I the jerk for keeping track of his behavior and bringing it to his attention? Edit to add. Going to add to this because I think it's important to make clear. Him stretching out after dinner is a very normal occurrence. He wasn't in awful pain, he just had a bit of a catch in his back. I can see how this could appear disrespectful though and appreciate the feedback. I think my biggest frustration is he can say no and walk away. However, I must take care of it because I am not going to leave a mess on the floor for my kids to live with. Also, we do not fight in front of our kids, and we both work to have calm communication in front of them. I strongly suggest that you are married to a narcissist because here's what happened. You went to him with ironclad proof. But are you guys talking about his behavior? No. Instead, you're talking about your behavior. The best defense is the good offense. You gave him proof, and he came back with his own gaslighting accusation, and now that's what you guys are busy talking about. In the meantime, his double standard isn't being discussed. This is what narcs do. Source: former marriage. Advice: don't have any more kids. Info: do you get any days off? Or are you mommy to 4 kids every day of the week? Does your husband regularly say no to your requests for teamwork? Does your husband spontaneously take on tasks, or does he need to be asked? Does your husband go out of his way to do things in service to you, your kids' upbringing, your household, or does he just go to work? OP: good question. He always keeps the kids when I ask him, and he's a great father. He usually has to be asked to do most tasks at home, but he works really hard on things outside, grass, house upkeep, etc. He often does not think of ways to serve me outside of his everyday things, which bothers me, but he will usually do whatever I ask if I really need it or want it. So essentially, you bear the entire emotional and planning load of the internal household and family running, while he occasionally does things outside that aren't as frequent? OP: essentially, yes. OP: I cannot tell if you are a stay-at-home mom, but you were very young when you had your first, so I think this advice still applies. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my husband works long hours in healthcare. Firstly, a marriage is supposed to make both lives happier, healthier, and easier. It requires trust, respect, equality, similar goals and values. Do you have all that? Marriage is about sharing life's burdens, so both lives are improved. Does he do that? Secondly, if you are a stay-at-home mom, your husband still should be doing his fair share of childcare and housework without you needing to tell him. My husband and I established my job as a stay-at-home mom to be that of a nanny to our kids. Anything a full-time nanny position would do is what I do while my husband is at work. I play with, feed, take care, and go on adventures with the kids. Maybe throw in laundry and do day dishes. Anything else is saved for when husband gets home. Then I cook dinner, we eat dinner as a family, and we split duties at night. One does bedtime routine. One does end-of-day chores, wiping counters, taking out trash, night dishes, sweeping. We each get an hour every other night to rest and relax because rest is so important as well. On weekends, I do a deep clean Saturday morning while my husband spends time with our kids. It's important he gets quality time with them. In the afternoon, my husband can do his outside chores if needed, but there is always far less to do outside than inside. Along with that, my husband still does some emotional labor. Yes, I do more housework and childcare and emotional labor, but he definitely contributes. What is the split of household duties for your house? How much time do you think he spends on his chores versus yours? Finally, as a stay-at-home mom, I very strongly urge stay-at-home moms to have the following. Being a stay-at-home mom is such a vulnerable position, you need financial, emotional, and physical stability. But I also think it applies to your situation even if you do work, because you need to think if you're financially equals. Doing all the childcare can still put you at a financial disadvantage. Is your husband able to advance his career faster because you're busy with the kids? You should have access to all, or almost all, of the money in a joint bank account. Can you freely spend money on yourself, your baby, and the household within reason? Do you and your husband each have similar amounts of hobby money? If he spends $100 on games, do you get $100 for your hobbies? Do you feel you can jointly decide how money is spent and your husband will listen to your thoughts and advice? You should have 6 months worth of bills saved in a bank account that your husband cannot access, meaning only your name is on the account. If your husband left you tomorrow, how would you afford food and rent while trying to get back on your feet and find a job? If something happened to him, would you know how and where you would pay all the bills and be able to until you found other money? Do you have a substantial maxed out life insurance policy on your husband and yourself if either of you were to pass? How will you support your kids and yourself if he suddenly left you or passed? Do you have career training and a career you plan to return to after your baby enters school? How could you financially support yourself if needed tomorrow? Re-entering the workforce can be difficult, especially without an education. You deserve to have an ability to support yourself if something were to happen to your husband or your relationship. You deserve a safety net for yourself and your kids. Do you have a retirement account? If you're a stay-at-home mom, has your husband opened a retirement account in your name? By working, he probably automatically has retirement accounts, but you should have some for yourself as well. Finally, do you have family and friend support? Can your family financially, physically, mentally, and emotionally support you if anything went south in your relationship? Can you live with them and have help caring for your kids while you readjust? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my sister I didn't ask for us to be sisters any more than she did? My sister is 24 and I'm 26, female. She's getting married and this was a fight over wedding stuff, but it's an ongoing issue. She always had the idea that a big sister is meant to be your best friend, protector, is meant to put you first, take care of you, spoil you rotten, and adore you. I was a letdown for her in that regard. I loved her, of course, but I wasn't devoted to her, and I never thought she was the best thing in my life. Over the years, she's tried to make me be the sister she's always wanted me to be. She's asked me to cancel my plans with friends. She'd give me a list of sister gifts I could buy her. She'd invite herself along to my plans, etc. We fought about it a lot. When she turned 17 and I didn't want to take her on vacation, she lost it with me and told me I was a horrible big sister and I never deserved the job. After she got engaged, she asked her best friend to be her maid of honor and 2 of her close friends to be bridesmaids. Unknown to me was the fact that she wanted me to be upset she didn't ask me. She expected me to confront her and say I wanted to be maid of honor. She brought up wedding stuff at our parents' house and mentioned her bridesmaids. When I didn't comment about it, she asked me how I could be such a jerk. She said I'm her sister and I should be the maid of honor, that I should be hurt she didn't ask me. She wanted to know why I hadn't asked her. I told her to calm down, that it was her wedding and she could have whoever she wanted, that it wasn't my wedding or my business. That started her off on a tangent about how I'm evil. She said it was the only thing that could explain being such an awful older sister. She listed all the stuff I should have done throughout our lives as her big sister, all the duties I had towards her, and how I was nothing but a disappointment and she hated having me as a big sister. It upset me so much to expect so much of me like I'm her parent. I told her I didn't ask for us to be sisters any more than she did, and that siblings are not parents, even when they're older, and it's not our job to cater to younger siblings' every whim. She burst into tears. She told our parents I was being mean. They said nothing, not one darn thing to either of us. She told me I was being the biggest jerk in the world for saying something like that. Am I the jerk? Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.